Chapter 901. Junior Brother Lu, what do you think? Shangguan Xiao, who had been silent all this time, suddenly turned to look at Lu Yi, who was adjusting his chaotic spirit qi. The A3 team led by King Gengwu had their own strengths, and Shangguan Xiao's was good at observation. Just now, they had experienced a great change and were attacked by the divine sense of a spirit sea realm cultivator. Others might not have paid much attention to it, but Shangguan Xiao did not forget. Before Ninggu could reveal her true cultivation, this able-bodied junior apprentice brother, who had been temporarily pulled in, had already slashed out with his blade. This undoubtedly meant that he was extremely sensitive to the impending crisis, which was why he was able to attack before Ninggu. After all, Ninggu was a hidden spirit sea realm cultivator. Such keen senses could be said to be terrifying. In this situation, it was not wrong to ask Lu Ye's opinion. You can't judge a book by its cover. Shangguan Xiao would never underestimate others just because of their low cultivation. Just as King Gengwu said before, who didn't start from the first order True Lake realm? What's the point of asking him? Xiao Ruiyun said impatiently. He's just a first order True Lake realm cultivator. Maybe he hasn't even seen a real battlefield. In this situation, it's better to retreat quickly. Shangguan Xiao glanced at him. If Captain is awake, he probably won't make this choice. But Captain is already unconscious, and Captain will never joke about our lives. Amidst the noise, Lu Yi suddenly stood up with his long saber and took a few deep breaths. His chest and abdomen were aching, but other than that, he was fine. It didn't affect his strength at all. He waved his hand, and Hupo immediately turned into the size of a cat and jumped onto his shoulder. Junior Brother Lu. Kong Yuanxiao looked at him in shock, and the others also looked over. Lu Yi looked in the direction of the screams and fighting sounds, and said slowly, I don't know what you're going to do when you encounter this kind of situation, but I've suffered a loss, so I naturally have to pay for it. If the opportunity is right, I'll pay for it now, immediately. Everyone was stunned. Naturally, they could see Lu Ye's intention to intervene in the affairs of the immortal Dawn Mountain. Even Kong Yuanxiao, who suggested joining forces with the True Lake Realm cultivators of the immortal Dawn Mountain, couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't know where Lu Yi got his courage from. If he went there, he would be facing a warrior at the Spirit Sea realm. A True Lake cultivator naturally had no chance of winning against a God Ocean cultivator. Just the suppression of spiritual will alone was enough to consign a True Lake cultivator to eternal damnation. But coincidentally, Lu Yi had a rare treasure that could be used to deal with Divine Sea Realm warriors. However, in an emergency like the one before him, the military rank determined the size of the right to speak. Lu Yi didn't think of using his military rank to pressure others. His cultivation was right there, so what was the use of having a high military rank? It was better to not do things that were difficult to convince others. Moreover, he and the people of Team A3 had only met by chance and were pulled in to carry out the mission together. They didn't know each other that well, so he didn't want the others to help him and prepared to go alone. Because he himself didn't know how useful that strange treasure would be. If it was really useful, perhaps it could resolve the danger of the immortal Dawn Mountain. If it was useless, then he would have to retreat. However, the other party held the guard token in front of him, so Lu Yi had no choice but to respond. He untied the guard token at his waist and waved it at Xiao Ruiyun. I'm afraid you can't order me around. The sudden burst of purple light almost blinded Xiao Ruiyun's eyes. Kong Yuanxiao and the others also stared at Lu Ye's back in a daze, their hearts in turmoil. It wasn't until Lu Yi soared into the sky and flew towards the depths of the immortal Dawn Mountain that Mu Zheng exclaimed, Captain? The few of them were all captains. It wasn't that their cultivation wasn't high enough, but that they didn't have enough battle merits. Only their captain, who had stayed in the True Lake stage for a longer time, was given the rank of captain. However, their captain, King Gengwu, was in the True Lake stage 9th order, while Lu Yi was only in the 1st order. Xiao Ruiyun originally wanted to use his military rank to order Lu Yi to retreat, but he didn't expect Lu Ye's military rank to be one level higher than his. How could he order him around? Lu Yi already gave him a lot of face by not ordering him to follow along. Captain is awake. A low shout was heard. Everyone didn't have time to be shocked by Lu Ye's captain anymore, and gathered around King Gengwu. At this time, the square of the Immortal Dawn Mountain's main peak was covered in blood and corpses. Surprisingly, Ninghu had already started his massacre. There were more than 20 true lake stage cultivators in the Immortal Dawn Mountain. It could be said that their foundation was quite good, but most of them weren't in the sect. They were either working for the state guards or wandering outside for other reasons. There were only 7 true lake stage cultivators in the sect, including an Mofeng and Ninghu. At this moment, 3 of them were already dead. Their bodies were covered in blood, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The remaining few, including an Mofeng, were all injured. Obviously, they had just fought a fierce battle with Ninghu. When Lu Yi arrived, he saw many cultivators of the Immortal Dawn Mountain looking at Ninghu with anger and shock. Ninghu was also carrying a young man who was only in the Third Order Cloud River realm. The young man was about the same age as Lu Yi. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, his talent was obviously extraordinary. In a 4th grade sect like the Immortal Dawn Mountain, he would definitely be the future mainstay of the sect. The impression that Ninghu gave to everyone in the Immortal Dawn Mountain was one of benevolence and warmth. The lake that he cultivated in seclusion was a place that anyone could enter. Many disciples would seek advice from him when they met with difficulties in cultivation. Thus, when he suddenly revealed a side that no one knew about, not only were the normal disciples unable to accept it, even the true lake stage elders were unable to accept it. The contrast was too big. However, there were at least a few dozen corpses all over the square. It was clear that Ninghu was a spy of the 10,000 Demon Ridge. When Lu Yi hurried over, Ninghu turned to look at him. There was a hint of envy in his eyes. Everything was afraid of comparison. The young man in his hand was about the same age as the young man from the law department, but their cultivation and temperament were completely different. Why couldn't the Immortal Dawn Mountain cultivate such an outstanding disciple when others had one? However, his goal wasn't Lu Yi, so he didn't pay much attention to him after a glance. A first-order true lake stage cultivator couldn't change the current situation. At the same time, Lu Yi also had doubts in his heart. Why didn't Ninghu escape? His identity had been exposed and he had admitted it. Logically speaking, he could have escaped quickly. Otherwise, once the law department mobilized the nearby Spirit Sea stage cultivators, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. Not only did he not escape, but he also came here to start a massacre? What was his intention? If it was as he said, it would take him a lot of time to destroy the Immortal Dawn Mountain by himself, even if he could do it. As his thoughts raced, Lu Yi noticed something. Ninghu didn't want to leave here alive. Even if he escaped, he wouldn't be able to escape the sphere of influence of the War Province's Grand Heaven Alliance. As for his real purpose, Lu Yi didn't know. A young man who was sent here by the 10,000 Demon Ridge and hid for nearly 100 years had his roots in the 10,000 Demon Ridge, but his cultivation was all in the Immortal Dawn Mountain. Whether he was from the 10,000 Demon Ridge or the Grand Heaven Alliance, who could say for sure? At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air came from behind. Lu Yi turned around and saw King Gungwu and the others from the A3 squad rushing over. Seeing that Lu Yi was unharmed, King Gungwu let out a long sigh of relief. The other members didn't know Lu Ye's background. They only thought that he was a man that King Gungwu randomly picked on the street. Although King Gungwu wasn't too sure, he was still the person chosen by the Division Lord. If anything happened to him, it would be difficult to explain to the Division Lord. Chapter 902. Seeing that Lu Yi was unharmed, King Gungwu heaved a sigh of relief. No wonder he was chosen by the sect leader. In such a situation, he actually dared to come here alone. Not to mention other things, just this courage alone was enough to surpass the other members of his team. Senior Gung, Lu Yi called out softly. King Gungwu nodded. He looked at the situation and frowned. He had the same question as Lu Yi. Why didn't Ninggu escape? Before he could figure it out, he heard Ninggu yelling, Senior Gung, can't you see through the situation? Blood flowed from the corner of Mofeng's mouth. He covered his chest with his hand and said, no matter what, let Ziyan go first. You watched him grow up. The young cultivator called Ziyan, who was being held in Ninggu's hand, said with difficulty, Grand Elder, please spare my life. Ninggu shook his head slowly and looked at Mofeng bitterly. Senior Gung, you disappoint me. Our talents were similar in the past, but now I'm at the divine ocean level. What about you? You're still stuck at the true lake level. You used more cultivation resources in the sect, but now I'm at a higher level. Do you know why? And Ma Feng sighed. The old sect leader once said that in terms of talent, you're better than me. Bullshit. Ninggu shouted angrily. That old thing's eyesight is bad. He can't even see that I'm a spy from the Myriad Demon's Ridge. What else can he see? Today I'll tell you why I can reach the divine ocean level but you can't. As he spoke, he took a step forward. It's because you've always placed your hopes on others. You've never thought of fighting for yourself. Generation after generation, you've always been able to reach the divine ocean level. You made the leading immortal Changshan Pu rise to the ranks of the third rank. You are one, your teeth are overboard. It is better to rely on yourself than on others. Don't forget that you're the sect leader of the immortal Dawn Mountain. And Ma Feng was slightly dazed by Ninggu's loud roar. He thought back to the past few decades and realized that what Ninggu said was true. After realizing that he wouldn't be able to step into the divine sea realm for a long time, he had placed all his hopes on the disciples below him, losing all will to struggle and strive. Ninghu continued, in the last generation you placed all your hopes on that little brat surnamed Zhong, but in the end, he died just after breaking through to the Cloud River realm. In this generation you have placed all your hopes on Ziyan. His luck is better than that little brat surnamed Zhong's and he is now a third-order Cloud River realm cultivator, but how can you guarantee that he won't die prematurely? So what if he managed to cultivate all the way to the true lake ninth order? Can you guarantee that he can ascend to the divine sea? I can do it, great elder. The young man called Ziyan shouted. I can definitely do it. No one can be certain about the future. He tightened his grip, and Ziyan couldn't make a sound. He looked up at An Ma Feng and said, Senior brother, you have the potential to reach the divine sea realm. It's just that your temperament and spirit have been destroyed. And Ma Feng sighed. What's the point of saying all this now? Of course. Ninghu suddenly laughed. And Ma Feng suddenly realized that something was wrong and asked in surprise, what are you going to do? Cut off the expectations and thoughts in your heart. You can only rely on yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, Ninghu tightened his grip and with a cracking sound, Ziyan's neck was crushed. The light in his eyes quickly dimmed. Although Ninghu had gone on a killing spree and killed dozens of people, no one had expected that he would really kill Ziyan. Because in the past, the relationship between the grandfather and grandson was very good. Ziyan could be said to have watched Ninghu grow up and taught him. Ninghu could be considered half his master. Even so, Ninghu had killed Ziyan without hesitation. His ruthlessness was shocking. Ninghu threw Ziyan's body aside like a rag and shouted, Senior brother, whether you can protect the immortal Dawn Mountain or not depends on yourself. You have to hurry. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed towards the place where the crowd was the densest. How could the immortal Dawn Mountain disciples resist when a spirit sea realm cultivator attacked so unscrupulously? In an instant, many of them died. Stop! A few injured elders beside An Ma Feng were furious. They no longer cared about the difference in strength between them and rushed towards Ninghu to stop him. And Ma Feng himself seemed to be dumbfounded. He stood there with his eyes filled with confusion. Stop him! On the other side, almost as soon as Ninghu attacked, King Gungwu ordered and rushed out. The rest of the team followed closely behind and joined the battle. In an instant, a great battle broke out and spirit energy surged. Including the True Lake Realm Elders and the members of Team A3, there were 8 True Lake Realm cultivators present. King Gungwu was a True Lake Realm 9th Order cultivator. With such a lineup they could barely fight against Ninghu. But they were still not his match. The gap of a great realm was extremely terrifying. So even though Lu Ye's team had the advantage in numbers, they were still at a disadvantage. Fortunately, the members of Team A3 cooperated well, so there were no casualties. Especially King Gungwu, who was the strongest among them. He used all his strength and restrained 30% of Ninghu's energy by himself. Lu Yi did not have the tacit understanding of Team A3, so he tried his best not to disrupt their cooperation. In addition, his cultivation was the lowest, so he had been wandering around since the beginning of the battle. It was not that he cherished his life, but he was waiting for an opportunity. An opportunity to use the treasure in his hand. Ninghu did not use his divine sense. It was not that he could not, but even as a spirit sea realm cultivator, using his divine sense consumed a lot of spirit energy. Especially since he was only a second-order spirit sea realm cultivator, he naturally would not rashly use his trump card. This gave the others a chance to entangle him. But the battle could not continue like this. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the two true Lake Realm elders of Immortal Dawn Mountain had fallen to the ground one after another. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. On Team A3's side, King Gungwu was bleeding from his 7 orifices. Kong was suffering from the backlash of his technique, so the spirit energy in his body was in chaos. It was difficult for him to do anything. Mu Zheng, the female cultivator, was even worse. Besides Lu Yi, her cultivation was the lowest in the team. Just now she was caught off guard and was punched in the stomach by Ninghu. She was sent flying 20 feet away. At this moment, she was leaning against a wall and constantly coughing up blood. Obviously, she did not have any energy left to fight. On the contrary, Lu Yi, who had the lowest cultivation, was in the best condition. First, he had been wandering around the periphery, not giving Ninghu a chance to seriously injure him. Second, with the help of returning moon and the defensive spirit rune, he could at least protect himself from the aftermath of the battle. The opportunity he had been waiting for did not come, but his team was about to collapse first. Once King Gungwu and the others were seriously injured and unable to fight back, everyone could only wait for death. "Captain, if the people from the law division don't come, I'm afraid I'll have to go first," Xiao Ruiyun roared as he struggled to defend against Ninghu's frenzied attacks. Suddenly, a crisp sound came from his arm. It was his arm bone that was broken. Although he had advocated for an immediate retreat and even used the guard token to stop Lu Yi when he moved, he did not hesitate to use the guard token. However, when it came to the real battle, he was not careless at all. There were a few times when he blocked the aftermath of Lu Ye's attacks. "Hold on a little longer, they are on their way," King Gungwu replied. As if King Gungwu's words made Ninghu feel a sense of danger, he frowned and no longer wanted to continue the battle. In the next moment, his divine sense surged and turned into an invisible force that blasted towards King Gungwu. At the moment when he used his divine sense to attack, Lu Yi, who had been waiting for a long time, also activated his divine sense at the same time. An almost transparent small sword without a handle shot out from his hand. Deity Vanquishing Sword. This was a rare treasure that cost Lu Yi 26,000 battle points. It was the reason why he dared to fight against Ninghu. The Deity Vanquishing Sword was meant to vanquish one's divine sense. He did not know how powerful this rare treasure was. In addition, there was a huge gap between his cultivation level and Ninghu's. Therefore, he did not dare to use it recklessly and had been waiting. He was waiting for the moment when Ninghu activated his divine sense. The Deity Vanquishing Sword turned into a sharp ray of light and arrived in front of Ninghu in an instant, breaking his divine sense attack. Ninghu could not help but let out a muffled groan. This was the danger of a battle between divine sense cultivators. Although divine sense cultivators were born in the divine sea realm, they would not activate their divine sense attacks easily because it would give their enemies an opportunity to attack. Ninghu did not expect that the weakest cultivator present would have a way to deal with him. In a moment of carelessness, his divine sense was broken and he felt a sharp pain in his head. Originally, his divine sense attack was aimed at King Gungwu. If he had used it fully, King Gungwu would have been stunned and his life would be in danger. However, after his divine sense was broken, King Gungwu only felt a slight dizziness in his head and then he was fine. On the other hand, Ninghu endured the pain of his divine sense being broken and raised his hand to catch the Deity Vanquishing Sword. Seeing this, Lu Ye's heart sank. This was the weapon he relied on to deal with divine sea realm cultivators. He had spent 26,000 battle points to exchange for this rare treasure from the War Merit Pavilion. He had high hopes for it, but it turned out like this. Just when he thought that the Deity Vanquishing Sword did not live up to its name, the rare treasure that he caught suddenly slashed out a small ray of sword light. The ray of sword light cut into Ninghu's forehead, but it did not cause any harm to him. Instead, it disappeared the moment it came into contact with him. However, Ninghu felt as if he was hit by a hammer. His head jerked back and his body staggered backward. He could not help but let go of the deity vanquishing sword. At the same time, he let go of the deity vanquishing sword and let out a miserable scream. The sudden change of events confused everyone. However, they knew that it must be the work of Lu Ye's rare treasure. King Gengwu was extremely good at grasping opportunities. Almost at the same time Ninghu retreated, King Gengwu rushed forward and punched out with both of his fists. There was a loud boom. Ninghu's skinny body flew out and he spat out blood in the air. Rays of sword light chased after Ninghu. It was Kong Yuanxiao's flying sword. Lu Yi also raised his saber and stabbed out with the starry sky sword. Brother Shun. Shun Zhongqing walked on the road. When he met someone he knew, he would greet them or nod his head. But no matter who it was, everyone's face was expressionless. It was as if they were indifferent to everything. To this, Shun Zhongqing was already used to it. This was the Demon Suppression Department, an organization that maintained the stability of the Great Qin Empire. Their main job was to kill demons and monsters. Of course, they also had other side jobs. Could be said that, in the Demon Suppression Department, everyone's hands were stained with blood. When a person was used to life and death, they would become indifferent to many things. When Shun Zhongqing first came to this world, he was not used to it. But as time passed, he got used to it. The Demon Suppression Department was huge. Those who could stay in the Demon Suppression Department were all powerful experts or people who had the potential to become experts. Shun Zhongqing belonged to the latter. The Demon Suppression Department was divided into two professions. One was the Guardian and the other was the Demon Slayer. Anyone who entered the Demon Suppression Department would start from the lowest level, the Demon Slayer. Then, they would advance step by step until they finally had a chance to become a Guardian. Shun Zhongqing's previous life was a Demon Slayer trainee in the Demon Suppression Department. He was also the lowest level Demon Slayer trainee. He had the memories of his previous life. He was also very familiar with the environment of the Demon Suppression Department. It did not take long for Shun Zhongqing to stop in front of a loft. Unlike the other places in the Demon Suppression Department that were filled with killing intent, this loft was like a crane in a flock of chickens. In the Demon Suppression Department that was filled with blood, it presented a different kind of tranquility. At this moment the loft's door was open. Occasionally people would enter and leave. Shun Zhongqing only hesitated for a moment before stepping in. He entered the loft. The environment suddenly changed. A faint smell of ink mixed with the faint smell of blood wafted over. His brows instinctively furrowed, but they quickly smoothed out. The smell of blood on everyone in the Demon Suppression Department was almost impossible to clean. Chapter 903. When the attack stopped, Ninghu's hair was disheveled and his body was like a broken sieve, bleeding profusely. He was caught off guard by the attack of the rare treasure, which caused him to suffer greatly. However, he was still alive. Not only that, but the pain in his soul made his counterattack even more violent. If Ninghu was crazy before, he still had his own thoughts. Now he was like a madman. Fortunately, his soul was damaged and his mind was in a mess. Therefore, although his attacks were fierce, they did not have a clear goal. King Gengwu was scared out of his wits as he fought with Ninghu. Even Kong Yuanxiao's flying sword was not enough to support Ninghu. Ninghu had lost his biggest advantage in the Spirit Sea realm after his spiritual will was broken. However, his cultivation of spiritual power was still there. It was not easy to defeat someone like him. Senior brother Geng Dodge. Lu Yi roared and something appeared in his hand. He raised his hand and threw it at Ninghu. King Gengwu reacted quickly. Although it was the first time he worked with Lu Yi to kill an enemy, he had great trust in Lu Yi. Almost as soon as Lu Yi opened his mouth, King Gengwu retreated. Boom! A loud sound was heard. In the midst of the flames, the impact of the explosion and the scorching heat wave drowned Ninghu. King Gengwu, who had retreated not far away, saw this scene and his eyelids twitched. He was glad that he dodged quickly. If he was a little slower, he would have been engulfed. Although this kind of power would not kill him, it was enough to make him lose face. What is this? When King Gengwu turned his head to look, he saw Lu Ye's hands clasping onto another item that exploded just now. King Gungwu was at a loss as he realized that those items were just spirit stones, the fire spirit stones of the 5 elemental spirit stones. Bao King Gungwu knew that the fire attribute spiritual energy within the fire spirit stone was violent and unstable. Therefore, he had to be careful when handling the fire spirit stone because the fire attribute spiritual energy within it could dissipate if it were to be touched. He had never heard of this kind of thing exploding. Moreover, its power was not bad. It was almost equivalent to the full strength attack of a true Lake Realm cultivator. Boom boom boom. Lu Yi kept throwing out the fire stones, which were branded with explosive inscriptions, one after another, turning them into balls of scorching flames that wrapped around Ninghu's body. Normally, such an attack would not work, because a warrior at the Spirit Sea realm would not stand there and take his attack like a fool. But Ninghu's divine will was broken, and his head was hurting. His mind was in a mess, and he could only rely on his instincts. There was no way he could avoid such an attack. Fire spiritual stone and explosion spiritual tattoo were the means of fighting against the enemy. Some killing weapons found by Lu Yi in the underground Karst cave should be refined by the Fire Spirit clan. Although the patterns on them were not exactly the same as the explosion spiritual tattoo, it was enough to inspire a real spiritual tattooist. This was the first time Lu Yi had used such a method against an enemy, and it was against a Spirit Sea realm warrior. The effect was surprisingly good. The sound of explosions rang out continuously. Kong Wang thought that these things had been specially refined, but in reality, Lu Yi had only imprinted explosive spirit patterns on the fire spirit stones the moment he took them out and then tossed them out. While taking out the fire spirit rock, Lu Yi secretly activated his divine sense to check Ninghu's condition. He was startled. Ninghu still had some vitality in him. He wasn't dead yet. Lu Yi could not help but exclaim that Ninghu was a Spirit Sea realm warrior after all. As Ji Hao prepared to keep attacking like this to wear Ninghu to death, Ninghu suddenly pounced on Ji Hao from the raging fire. At this moment, Ninghu could only follow his instinct. Killing Lu Yi was his instinct to protect himself. The only thought he had left was that if he didn't kill Lu Yi, he would die soon. Oh no! King Gungwu thought that the battle was over. Seeing Ninghu's actions, he was shocked and wanted to stop him. 6 Origin Spirit Lock. Lu Yi roared. Ninghu's divine will had been broken, and he could not use his divine will to attack like before. Therefore, as long as he could take him down with the 6 Origin Spirit Lock, he would be able to win. But before that, he had to think of a way to stay alive in front of the furious Ninghu. He continued to throw out the Fire Spirit Rock. Along with the powerful impact, it still could not stop a Spirit Sea realm warrior. King Gungwu blocked Lu Ye's path and delayed him for a while. Lu Yi quickly took out formation flags and threw them in all directions. At the same time, he activated his spiritual energy to connect the formation flags, and a core spiritual inscription appeared on them. King Gungwu was sent flying. Ninghu pounced on Lu Yi like a cheetah pouncing on its prey. Before he arrived, he had already clawed at Lu Yi. As Lu Yi slashed forward with his saber, he borrowed the force of the attack to retreat. Ninghu landed on the ground. However, before he could launch a second attack, Lu Yi had already activated the power of the formation. Suddenly, a visible light curtain rose and turned into a transparent semicircle, trapping Ninghu inside. Ninghu pounced but was stopped by the light curtain. He was so angry that he roared like an injured beast. His frenzied attacks made the light curtain of the trapping formation dim at a speed visible to the naked eye. The great saint of human Tao domain named such a trapping formation could only trap him for a second. Many figures landed in all directions. They were the members of the A3 team. It was the same as when they first saw Ninghu on the lake. Everyone was injured, and a few of them had lost the ability to fight. However, they had no problem using their 6 Origin Spirit Lock. Almost at the moment when Lu Ye's trapping formation was broken, the 6 Origin Spirit Lock came into effect. In an instant, Lu Ye's spiritual energy was sealed. Ninghu, who had finally reached Lu Yi, was kicked back. With his divine will broken and his spiritual energy sealed, Ninghu's physical body, which had been cultivating for his whole life, was limited. Naturally, he could not block Lu Ye's kick. Just as he flew into the air, 2 dragon binding ropes were released. When he landed, he was tied up like a dumpling. Saber. King Gungwu stretched out his hand to Lu Yi. Lu Yi understood tacitly and tossed his magic tool long saber over. King Gungwu strode forward and arrived in front of Ning Hu in a flash. He stabbed his Dharma weapon into Ning Hu's heart. The original mission for this trip was to bring Ning Hu back to Grand Sky City alive, but many unforeseen events had occurred, and the target of the mission had changed from a true Lake Realm Ninth Order to a Second Order Divine Sea Realm. Naturally, they couldn't leave him alive. Who knew what would happen next? If Ning Hu managed to break free again, all their previous efforts would be in vain. Facing such a situation, they could only kill him to prevent future troubles. As the long saber pierced through his body, Ning Hu, who was struggling madly, felt as if he was struck by a lightning talisman. He instinctively smashed his head into King Gungwu's head. King Gungwu staggered back and pulled out his Dharma weapon. Blood gushed out from Ning Hu's heart like a fountain. Maybe it was the final radiance of the setting sun, or maybe it was the headbutt that gave him a brief moment of clarity. He raised his eyes and looked at an Mo Feng, who had been standing there since the beginning of the battle as if he had lost his mind. A look of disappointment flashed across his cloudy eyes. He slowly turned his head and took one last look at the scenery that had accompanied him for decades. He sighed. The foundation of our ancestors for hundreds of years is going to be ruined in the end. Then, he looked at Lu Yi and nodded slightly. You're good. As soon as he finished speaking, he fell on his back and died. The whole place was silent. Only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard. Captain, is he dead? After a long time, Xiao Ruiyan asked with a pale face. His spiritual energy was in a mess, and he could barely maintain his sixth origin spirit lock. King Gungwu turned his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. He's not dead. Xiao Ruiyan's face turned bitter. Captain, I'm not asking you. I'm asking if he's dead. King Gungwu glared at him. My saber pierced his heart. Do you think he's dead or not? He casually threw the blood-stained saber back to Lu Yi. Hearing him say that, the members of the team suddenly relaxed. They were all exhausted and sat on the ground. King Gungwu looked at Lu Yi. Are you okay? Lu Yi shook off the blood on his saber and sheathed it. He slowly shook his head. I'll be on guard. Everyone heal yourselves. Among the people present, he was the one with the lightest injuries. It was his duty to be on guard. Thank you. The injuries of the A3 team varied. Fortunately, no one died. However, the Immortal Dawn Mountain suffered a great loss this time. Not to mention the fact that the Great Elder, Ning Hu, was a spy from the Myriad Devil Ridge. Even the few true Lake Stage Elders who stayed behind died in the battle. As for the other disciples who were killed by Ning Hu, there were at least a dozen of them. Although this was not enough to cause serious damage to a rank 4 sect, it was still a great loss. The few true Lake Stage Elders who were still alive all sent people to comfort the disciples. They also organized people to treat the injured and clean up the battlefield. They were extremely busy. At this moment, the sect leader of the Immortal Dawn Mountain, An Ma Feng, suddenly staggered. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell on his back. Sect leader. A true Lake Stage Elder turned pale with fright and went forward to investigate. Once again it was chaos. Suddenly there was a clear sound of a sword. Then, a ray of sword light landed on the battlefield. The sword light disappeared, revealing a short old man. He was emitting a powerful aura. It was obvious that he was a Divine Sea Stage cultivator. The Divine Sea Stage cultivators from the law department had arrived. But they seemed to be a little late. What's going on? The short old man turned his head and looked around. He was confused for a moment. After receiving the news, he rushed here. He thought that he would definitely see a one-sided massacre here, or that the spy from Myriad Demon's Ridge had already escaped. But now, it seemed that the situation was a little different from what he had imagined. A shocking battle had taken place here, and there were traces of spiritual energy explosions everywhere. Many people had died, especially the skinny figure with a knife wound on his chest. He took 2 steps forward to take a look. The short old man was shocked. Ning Hu. It was the spy from the Myriad Devil Ridge who had reached the Divine Sea Stage. The great sage of human Tao, but he was dead. Chapter 904. As the leader of the enforcement team, King Gungwu didn't have time to rest when he saw the old sword cultivator. He quickly got up and reported the matter. The short old man was shocked when he heard this. He never thought that these people would be able to kill a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Even though he couldn't believe it, the truth was right in front of him. However, there were still many doubts about today's matter. The short old man thought for a moment, then clapped his hands and tapped on his battlefield mark to send a message. At the same time, thousands of miles away, a ray of light shot towards the immortal Dawn Mountain like a rainbow. Its speed was as fast as lightning. The figure wrapped in the stream of light was the Law Department head, Gan Wudang. At this moment, Gan Wudang no longer had his usual frivolous look. His face was solemn. Who would have thought that the great elder of the immortal Dawn Mountain, Ning Hu, was not only a spy of the Myriad Demon's Ridge, but also a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. He had never been exposed for so many years. Plus, he had been living in seclusion for so many years. Not many people had even seen him, which led to such a serious error in the intelligence report. When Gan Wudang received the news, he immediately had a thought in his mind. He was finished. This time it wasn't just Nian Yuxian who was going to break his skull. Even Shui Yuan was going to come too. How could he be a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator? He quickly mobilized the nearby Spirit Sea Realm cultivators to support him. At the same time, he left Grand Sky City and rushed towards the immortal Dawn Mountain. After so many years as the Law Department head, this was the first time he left Grand Sky City because there was nothing that required him to do personally. But this time it was different. Wuxia was in the A3 team. If something happened to him, Gan Wudang would have a hard time in the future. However, Grand Sky City was far from the immortal Dawn Mountain Road. Even if he was a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, he couldn't rush there immediately even if he pushed his speed to the limit. He could only pray in his heart that nothing happened to Wuxia halfway through his flight. He suddenly received a message. Gan Wudang quickly checked it. His heart was in his throat, afraid that he would see something he didn't want to see. But after a moment, his body suddenly stopped in mid-air. His expression became strange as he quickly sent a message back. Are you sure Ning Hu was killed? This old man saw it with his own eyes. Ning Hu's vitality dissipated. The old sword cultivator replied. But what puzzled him was that Ning Hu seemed to have been burned by a fire before he died. All the hair on his body was gone, and even the skin that was exposed to the air was charred. Then, he reported everything he knew to Qian Wudong. He then added, there are 3 suspicious points about this matter. First, Ning Hu's identity was exposed. Why didn't he escape? Instead, he went on a killing spree in the immortal Dawn Mountain. Logically speaking, since Ning Meng's identity was exposed, the first thing she should do was to escape. As for whether she could escape or not, it would depend on her own luck. But not only did he not escape, he even started a massacre of the immortal Dawn Mountain disciples. Secondly, during the battle, Mofeng didn't interfere. He just stood in place, as if he cherished the brotherhood of the past. Rare treasure? Yes. I don't know what kind of treasure it is. After all, I didn't see it with my own eyes. But according to King Gungwu's description, it's a finger-long hiltless sword. I suspect it's the legendary Deity Vanquishing Sword. Deity Vanquishing Sword? Qian Wudong's face turned serious. It hasn't appeared in the world for decades. The last time it appeared, it was in the hands of that person. After that person died, it disappeared without a trace. Wuxia and that person came from the same sect. It's not strange for him to have it. I think Tang Yifeng gave it to him to protect himself. Well, if this kid really has the Deity Vanquishing Sword, then it makes sense. Let's not talk about this. What do you think of the other 2 things? The short old man pondered for a while and replied, according to my understanding of Ning Hu, he did this to put pressure on Mofeng. He wanted to force him to reach the Divine Sea level. After his identity was exposed, he didn't immediately run away. Instead, he slaughtered the disciples of Immortal Dawn Mountain. As Mofeng saw this, his mind must have been shaken and his divine soul must have been shaken. Perhaps he might have found a lucky chance to reach the Divine Sea realm. That's reasonable. That's why Mofeng didn't do anything since the beginning of the battle. He must have felt the opportunity to reach the divine sea level. But judging from the result, he probably failed. If that's the case, Ninghu really put in a lot of effort. After all, he was sent here by the Devil Ridge when he was very young. Although he has the foundation of the Devil Ridge, he grew up in the Immortal Dawn Mountain. He spent almost his entire life in the Immortal Dawn Mountain. Humans are not plants. Humph, if he really had feelings for her, why would he massacre his disciples? I think the most important thing is that he knew he couldn't escape. That's why he made such a choice. You stay there and take care of things. You can leave after you've dealt with the things over there. Yes. After ending the communication with the old man, Qian Wudong looked in the direction of the Immortal Dawn Mountain. He exhaled heavily and said to himself, the deity vanquishing sword has appeared. What about the soul-severing sword? Back then, this sword and saber had left an indelible psychological shadow on many divine sea-level cultivators in the Devil Ridge. Qian Wudong shook his head and turned back. In the Immortal Dawn Mountain, the disciples suppressed their grief. Under the command of the true Lake Realm elders, they cleaned up the battlefield and cleaned up the corpses of their fellow disciples. Lu Yi and the others were also sent to a spirit mountain to recuperate. The old man didn't leave. Instead he stayed. King Gengwu couldn't help but feel strange. Logically speaking, there was no reason for First Effect Keiicheo to stay and look after them when he saw them leave without a trace. Moreover, the matter here was basically settled. All that was left was for them to recuperate and report back to Grand Sky City. However, if the old man wanted to stay, King Gengwu couldn't say anything. Moreover, this was the territory of the Immortal Dawn Mountain. Among the group, Lu Ye's injuries were the lightest. Coupled with his strong body and vigorous vitality, he recovered the fastest. It only took him a day to recover. On the Spirit Mountain, in the pavilion outside the courtyard, Lu Yi took out the deity vanquishing sword and examined it. This worldly treasure played a miraculous role in the battle against Ninghu. If it wasn't for its sudden burst of power, he wouldn't have been able to break through Ninghu's divine sense. Even though he also had a soul and spiritual will, he was different from the normal Spirit Sea Realm cultivators. He had taken an unorthodox path. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't dare to use his divine sense to fight against a divine Sea Realm cultivator. This was also the reason why he didn't use his divine sense in the previous battle. It wasn't because he wanted to hide it, but because he had scruples. After the deity vanquishing sword's power was activated, it seemed to have undergone some changes. On the surface, it still looked like a transparent, colorless sword that was only the length of a finger. However, the deity vanquishing sword had a little spiritual light flowing within it. Now it was gone. The spiritual light had been activated by the deity vanquishing sword and blasted into Ninghu's divine sea. Although Lu Yi knew that worldly treasures were mostly one-time use items, he still felt that it was a pity. After all, it cost him 26,000 battle points to exchange for it from the War Merit Pavilion. He didn't know if the gains from this trip could make up for his loss. I think it should be enough, right? Suddenly, a shadow fell in front of him. Lu Yi was shocked. He instinctively leaped back and drew his sword. When he looked again, he saw that it was the old sword cultivator. He was standing in the same spot and looking at him with a smile. Don't be nervous, kid. I mean you no harm. I have some history with your sect master. Lu Yi said cautiously. Senior, are you talking about a friendship? Or a grudge? The old sword cultivator laughed. It seems like you know your sect master well. Lu Yi said nothing. This old man seemed to have many friends, but he also had many enemies. He had to be on his guard. It doesn't matter if it's a friendship or a grudge. However, the matters of the older generation should be dealt with by the older generation. It has nothing to do with the younger generation. The old sword cultivator didn't give a clear answer. Lu Yi understood. Even if this old man had some history with the sect master, they probably didn't get along well. As for what he said about the matters of the older generation being dealt with by the older generation, he might be such a person but others might not be. Lu Yi didn't forget that when he was rushing to Grand Heaven City from the Blue Blood sect, he encountered many things along the way. If it weren't for his second senior apprentice sister secretly protecting him, He probably wouldn't have been able to issue orders within the time limit. If he couldn't issue orders, then it would be Wei Lu Mountain. Obviously, it was an expert who had a grudge against the Blue Blood sect. Lu Yi still didn't know who was behind the scenes. Perhaps he would never know. Can you let this old man see the thing in your hand? The old sword cultivator asked. Lu Yi naturally didn't want to, but the difference in cultivation base was obvious. He couldn't win against the old man, so he threw the deity vanquishing sword over. He said casually, "This thing has lost its power and is useless. It's just that its quality is a little special. It was quite good to use as an imperial tool. It really is the deity vanquishing sword." The old man's words startled Lu Yi. "Senior, you recognize this thing?" It didn't make sense. This thing was exchanged in the War Merit Pavilion. He went to the Tianji treasure vault to look for it, but he didn't find the deity vanquishing sword. How did this old man know about a treasure unique to the War Merit Pavilion? "I recognize it." The old man nodded. "But I haven't seen it for decades. When Tang Yifeng passed this thing to you, didn't he tell you how to use it? What does it have to do with the sect master?" Lu Yi was suspicious and slowly shook his head. "This old." The old man laughed and threw the deity vanquishing sword back to Lu Yi. "Although I don't know the mystery of this thing, it's not a one-time treasure. Can be used many times. Decades ago, it was a treasure in the hands of your eldest senior apprentice brother. It was a killing weapon that made the divine sea realm and myriad demons rich tremble in fear. Now that it's in your hands, I hope you won't bury its reputation." Chapter 905. The old sword cultivator had already left. The reason why he showed up was probably because he wanted to see the deity vanquishing sword with his own eyes. However, Lu Yi could not calm down for a long time. Compared to what the old man said about the deity vanquishing sword not being a one-time use rare treasure, Lu Yi was more concerned about the fact that he mentioned his eldest senior brother. Lu Yi actually didn't know much about the eldest senior brother that he had never met, but he knew that his eldest senior brother was truly a stunning talent, a peerless figure that only appeared once in 10,000 years. Back then, the Jade Blood sect rose because of him but also fell because of him. The poison left behind decades ago still lingered. His eldest senior brother once had the deity vanquishing sword. In other words, the person who entered the War Merit Pavilion before him was indeed his eldest senior brother. Lu Yi actually had some guesses about this because when he first entered the War Merit Pavilion, the two dragons had said that no one had entered the War Merit Pavilion for decades. Who could be more amazing than his eldest senior brother a few decades ago? Other than him, who else was qualified to enter the War Merit Pavilion? A few decades ago, the deity vanquishing sword was in his eldest senior brother's hands. A few decades later, this item was in his hands. That was why the old sword cultivator had the illusion that this item belonged to the Jade Blood sect. A few thousand years after his eldest senior brother's death, the sect master passed it to him. Naturally, Lu Yi wouldn't try to explain the misunderstanding that had arisen. But this item was not a one-time use rare treasure. What did it mean? The spiritual light within the deity vanquishing sword had been activated. Now, the deity vanquishing sword was indeed made of a special material. Lu Yi originally intended to use it as a royal equipment. However, the old sword cultivator's words made Lu Yi think of a possibility. Since he was in another sect, it was inconvenient for him to verify it, so he put this item aside for now. King Gengwu and the others would probably need to rest for a few more days. The current environment was not suitable for cultivation, and it was not convenient for him to activate the talent tree to devour the fire spirit right. Lu Yi simply closed his eyes and focused, imprinting the soaring dragon's origin. He searched for the brightest light in the endless sea of stars, and followed the peak powerhouses of the soaring dragon realm to experience their magnificent lives. For some reason, when Lu Yi imprinted the soaring dragon's origin this time, he felt a little different from before. However, he could not pinpoint exactly what was different about it. But soon a huge surprise fell on his head. Because this time the imprinted target. Tears streamed down Lu Ye's face. It wasn't easy. Since he had obtained the Dragon Soaring Realm's broken source, he had the ability to imprint. Up until now, he had imprinted at least 80, if not 100, essences of powerful cultivators from various factions. There were even quite a few sword cultivators. This was because it was very easy for sword cultivators to appear among them. This caused the essences left behind by those sword cultivators to be even brighter, making it easier for Lu Yi to choose. After imprinting so many essences and witnessing the cultivation of so many experts from so many different factions and eras, Lu Yi now had expertise in every faction. When he transformed into Fierce Bull and cast spells, even Endless Shadow, who had spent a lot of time with him, couldn't see any flaws. Back when Pan Shan Dao was upgraded, he used his long spear to fight against Feng Ruli. Feng Ruli was beaten to the point of doubting his life. However, he had not met a single weapon cultivator who used sabers. This had become an obsession in Lu Ye's heart. Finally today the bitterness was over and the sweetness was about to come. He quickly immersed his mind and followed this saber-wielding weapon cultivator as he cultivated and grew. Time passed. When Lu Yi opened his eyes, they shone brightly. Obviously he had gained a lot. This time the target he chose to imprint was also at the peak of the Divine Sea Realm. His life's cultivation was a rare treasure for Lu Yi. The only imperfection was that this expert's path was somewhat different from Lu Ye's. Lu Ye's personality was more compatible with the tyrannical and violent saber techniques of the Tyrant Saber technique. The saber of this expert from the Soaring Dragon realm was more agile, however. The stone of another mountain could be used to polish the jade. Cultivating until now, Lu Yi had his own perseverance and style. Naturally, he would not be easily influenced by others. Learning from other people's cultivation experience and strengthening his own foundation was the way to go. How long has it been? Lu Yi asked. Every time he imprinted the Dragon Soaring Realm's essences, he would record the time. Because as his cultivation improved and his spirit grew stronger, the time it took to imprint was also slowly decreasing. At first it took Lu Yi 2 or 3 days to imprint the essences, but last time it only took less than a day. This was growth. For hours Yi, who was hiding in Hu Po's body, quietly replied. Lu Yi was slightly surprised and then overjoyed. So, this was what he felt strange about. He had a strange feeling just now. He felt that the Dragon Soaring Realm's essences today was a little different from before, but he could not pinpoint the specific difference. It was only now that he was sure of one thing. The time it took for him to imprint the essences was greatly reduced. This should not be just because he had advanced to the True Lake realm. The most important reason was that he had developed spiritual sense. Imprinting the essences consumed the power of his spirit. Now that he had developed a soul body and developed spiritual sense, the efficiency was naturally greatly increased. Perhaps one day, he could reach the level where he could imprint the essences left behind by those experts in his heart with just a thought. When that time came, he could imprint the Dragon Soaring Realm's essences anytime, anywhere, and quickly absorb its nutrients. He could gather the strengths of hundreds of schools and eliminate the impurities. Imprinting the many insights of that expert in saber techniques churned in his heart. Lu Yi stood up and landed in the air. He pulled out the long saber at his waist and danced as he wished. In an instant, spiritual energy surged and saber light flashed. This time's imprinting allowed him to make a huge breakthrough in his saber techniques. Although his cultivation did not increase at all, his means of dealing with enemies had greatly improved. Suddenly, Lu Ye's figure froze and his long saber slashed forward in a domineering manner. At this moment, Lu Yi felt as if he was in an endless starry sky with a crescent moon hanging high behind him. From this crescent moon, endless crescent-like saber lights fell down. The sound of the air being torn apart rang out incessantly. The crescent-shaped blade gleams contained an extremely shocking amount of killing power, cutting huge gullies in the ground all around. Even the entire Spirit Mountain shook. Tyrant Saber Art's second form, Crescent Moon. The inheritance of the Tyrant Saber Art was hidden in an inconspicuous black stone. By immersing one's soul into it, one could obtain its true inheritance. When Lu Yi obtained the inheritance, he had comprehended the first form, Vast Star. At that time, he was only a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. After such a long time, he had already mastered the first form. In his spare time, he had also tried to comprehend the second form of the Tyrant Saber Art, but his gains were not great. Until today, after imprinting the life of that master in the Soaring Dragon realm, and absorbing the essence and philosophy of this master's saber techniques, Lu Yi was finally able to fully display the second form. Compared to the first form vast star, the second form crescent moon was undoubtedly more lethal. Moreover, this saber seemed to be suitable for fighting against many enemies at once. However, the consumption was also greater. After displaying this saber, Lu Ye's arms were slightly sore and his blood was boiling. One had to know that he was now in the true lake realm. Yet this saber strike consumed so much of his Saint Qi. Now it seemed that the reason he could not comprehend the second form when he was in the Cloud River realm was not because his perception was insufficient, but because his cultivation was insufficient. Now that he was in the true lake realm, everything fell into place naturally. The first form was named after the star, the second form was named after the moon, and Lu Yi roughly understood what the third form was. It must be named after the sun. However, he did not try to comprehend the third style. After this experience, Lu Yi understood one thing. If one's cultivation was not high enough, comprehending it would not be of much use. It would be better to imprint the origin of the dragon soaring realm's powerhouses. If he was lucky, he might encounter a powerhouse with the saber. The huge commotion here immediately alarmed King Gongwu and the others who were recuperating in various rooms in the small courtyard. With the sound of something breaking through the air, figures appeared one after another. Turning their heads to take a look, they realized that it was not an enemy attack, but Lu Yi practicing his saber here. Looking at the mess all around, Xiao Ruiyun could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Oh my god! Such a scene was caused by a first-order true lake realm cultivator? The ground was covered in deep gullies that were 3 feet deep and several meters long. Not far away, there were huge saber marks left on the mountain walls. Even if he was a fifth-order true lake realm cultivator, he would not be able to leave such a mark. Moreover, he was a senior captain. Xiao Ruiyun did not forget that he wanted to suppress Lu Yi with his military rank yesterday, but was suppressed instead. Of course, it was just a loss of face. He did not hold a grudge. In fact, after the incident, he was a little grateful to Lu Yi, because no matter what, the mission this time was more than completed. The rewards would definitely not be small. The others were also shocked and looked at Lu Yi as if they were looking at a monster. Since you are all out, let's return to Grand Sky City to report, King Gongwu said. Originally, they still needed to recuperate for a few days and wait for their injuries to recover. But recuperating here was fine, and returning to Grand Sky City was also fine. The sooner they reported back, the sooner they could receive the rewards. You are the captain, you have the final say. Xiao Ruiyun shrugged indifferently. The others did not have any objections. Then let's go. As King Gongwu spoke, he directly summoned the spirit boat. It seemed that he was not going to greet the Immortal Dawn Mountain. In fact, there was no need to greet them. The Immortal Dawn Mountain was a mess and they were already very busy. There was no one to take care of them. Among them, Lu Yi was in the best condition. The task of steering the spirit boat fell to him. Lu Yi had no objections. Soon the spirit boat rose and broke through the sky. The old sword cultivator hiding in the dark saw this scene from afar. He sent a message to Qian Wudang to report the situation here and quickly left. On the way back, King Gongwu had the time to thank Lu Yi. Junior brother Lu, this mission is all thanks to you. If you did not turn the tide, our mission would have definitely failed. At that time, not to mention the reward for completing the mission, even the injuries they suffered before would have been in vain. Since we are members of the team, we should do our best. I heard that someone tried to stop you before. King Gongwu glared at Xiao Ruiyun as he spoke. He did not know what happened when he was unconscious. He only heard about it from Mu Zheng. Chapter 906. After being glared at by King Gongwu, Xiao Ruiyun immediately stood up and bowed to Lu Yi. Junior brother Lu, I was a snob. Please don't lower yourself to my level. He was a fifth-order true lake realm cultivator. His humble attitude showed his sincerity. Moreover, Lu Yi had no grudge with him. It was just a conflict of ideas. Naturally, he wouldn't hold it against him. Senior brother, you're too serious. I'm used to being alone. Plus, there were some things that were not easy to explain. Senior brother, you stopped me out of good intentions. Xiao Ruiyun grinned at Lu Yi. Junior brother Lu, you know how to talk. As for what Lu Yi said about some things that were not easy to explain, He was probably referring to the treasure that could break Ning Hu's divine sense. After all, they had never seen such a thing before. Even if Lu Yi said he had such a treasure, it might not be of much use. Considering the gap between their strength and Ning Hu's, no one would count on a treasure that they had never heard of. What are you laughing at? King Gengwu scolded with a straight face. The law enforcement team will advance and retreat together when carrying out a mission. We live and die together. This is the rule set by the law division in the early years. What makes me angry is not that you stopped Junior Brother Lu, but that when Junior Brother Lu took action, you all did not follow him immediately. Sweeping his gaze across, everyone lowered their heads in shame. When Lu Yi rushed to the depths of the immortal Dawn Mountain, they did not follow him immediately. Coincidentally, King Gengwu woke up at that time. After learning about the situation, he immediately rushed over with everyone. When the captain scolded his team, Lu Yi naturally did not interrupt. King Gengwu scolded them again and said, Junior Brother Lu deserves the most credit for the completion of this mission. I will report this matter in detail when I return to Grand Sky City. I will also ask the division chief to ask Heaven's Secret to deduct half of your reward from this mission and give it to Junior Brother Lu. What? Lu Yi was stunned. After the Lonely Mountain City siege, Thought Moon Immortal seemed to have asked Heaven's Secret to give him a large amount of merit. Thinking back to his experience in the Soaring Dragon Realm, Lu Yi had a deeper understanding of Heaven's Secret in the 9 states. Of course, even if it's all given to Junior Brother Lu, I have no objection. Xiao Ruiyun nodded seriously. Then your reward will be deducted, King Gengwu said. Please don't. Xiao Ruiyun immediately with a bitter face. I'm just saying it casually. Please don't take it seriously. At the side, Mujin could not help but burst into laughter, only to let out another shriek of pain as her injuries were aggravated. The others couldn't help but laugh as well. The solemn atmosphere became lively. Lu Junior Brother Lu Are you interested in Junior Brother Lu? Lu? Lu Junior Lu. Interested. Originally, King Gengwu only recruited Lu Ye's men under the orders of the minister. However, after this mission, King Gengwu realized that although Lu Ye's cultivation was low, he was very capable. Not to mention the treasure that could break through the spirit sense of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Even the weapon that could explode could be used by the team in the future. At the very least, when they were surrounded, the weapon would be very effective. And Lu Ye's ability to quickly arrange a spirit array. At that time, the crazy Ning Hu was trapped by Lu Ye's temporary trap formation, which gave them the chance to activate the 6 origin spirit restricting lock. Yang Kai wasn't clear about Lu Ye's strength as he hadn't seen much of it during this mission, but he had seen the traces of Lu Ye's saber art. It was definitely not something an ordinary first-order True Lake Realm cultivator could achieve. Team A3 hadn't been replenished. One reason was the lack of manpower in the Law Division. Another reason was that King Gengwu had his own vision. He wouldn't accept just anyone. If he chose someone who couldn't work well with the rest of the team, he might as well not choose. But if it was Lu Yi, he would have no problem. Senior brother, I appreciate your kindness. To be honest, I just reached the True Lake Realm not long ago. I'm not familiar with the situation here. King Gengwu nodded. He understood Lu Ye's meaning and didn't force him. Take your time, don't be too anxious. Time flew by as they chatted along the way. They rested twice in the middle of the mission. The next day, the huge Grand Sky City finally came into view. King Gengwu had to go to the Law Division to personally report the details of the mission. The others had yet to recover from their injuries, so they dispersed to treat their wounds. Lu Yi also found an ownerless house and walked in. There was one thing that was on his mind. The old sword cultivator said that the deity vanquishing sword wasn't a one-time use treasure. Since it wasn't a one-time use treasure, it didn't make sense that it would lose its power after one use. What he needed to do now was to find a way to restore its power. The only thing Lu Yi could think of was to infuse his divine sense into it. He couldn't use his divine sense casually when there were people around him. Now that he was hiding in his house, he could do whatever he wanted. However, after a series of attempts, he was exhausted and his divine sense was almost exhausted. Yet, he still couldn't restore the power of the deity vanquishing sword. On the other side, at the Law Division, King Gungwu reported all the details of the mission to Qian Wudong without missing anything. He also brought up his request to deduct half of everyone's reward and give it to Lu Yi. Qian Wudong listened quietly and nodded. I'm glad that you took the initiative to bring this up. I didn't misjudge you. All right, you haven't recovered yet. Go and rest. King Gungwu didn't leave immediately. Instead he said, Master, junior brother Lu is a great talent. Yes, so what? If I can use such a great talent, I will be invincible in future missions. King Gungwu clenched his fist and waved his hand excitedly. He looked like he was going to conquer the world if he could get Lu Yi. Qian Wudong felt a little uneasy. Just tell me what you want to do. Master, please transfer someone from the front line. My team is still lacking a member. After 3 breaths, King Gungwu flew out of the hall with a weird cry. He almost crashed into a passerby. Landing on the ground, he scratched his head in confusion. If you don't agree, then don't agree. Why are you so angry? The master's divine sense transmitted into his ears. You must keep this mission a secret. Other than your team, don't tell anyone else. Yes, master. King Gungwu quickly cupped his fist and replied. In the hall, Qian Wudong snorted and sat down slowly. Transferring Lu Yi from the front line? What a joke. If Lu Yi belonged to another mountain pass, the Law Division Master would only need to say a word to transfer him. Those mountain pass masters would definitely give him face. However, Lu Yi was now in the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass and was the only soldier under that woman's command. If he wanted to transfer someone from that woman's command, he, Qian Wudong, would lose his skull. When Lu Yi came to Grand Sky City, he was only in the 9th Order Cloud River realm. If Qian Wudong was in the True Lake realm at that time, he could have recruited him into the Law Division. However, the difference of one realm made him miss such a great opportunity and allowed Nian Yuxian to take advantage of it. However, after this experience, Qian Wudong would be able to borrow soldiers from Nian Yuxian in the future. If he borrowed too many times, even if he wasn't on the same side, he would become one of them. Qian Wudong was calculating in his heart. Initially, he asked King Gungwu to recruit Lu Ye's men with the intention of letting Lu Yi gain some benefits. After all, the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass had been peaceful for a long time, and Lu Yi wouldn't be able to gain much merit there. Who would have thought that such a huge surprise would happen? And it really made him interested in Lu Yi. Transferring people was impossible for the time being, but Lu Yi could use some of his methods. Thinking of this, Qian Wudong shouted, Men, why couldn't it work? In the secret room, Lu Yi looked at the deity vanquishing sword in his hand with a puzzled expression. According to his idea, if he wanted to replenish the power of the deity vanquishing sword, he should pour his divine sense into it. However, even if he exhausted his divine sense, he still couldn't restore the deity vanquishing sword to its original state. It didn't make sense that it wouldn't work. Did that old sword cultivator misunderstand something? If there was anyone who knew about eldest senior brother, it would be the sect master and Shui Yuan. Lu Yi quickly sent a message to Shui Yuan and asked about the deity vanquishing sword. According to the rules of the War Merit Pavilion, the origin of the treasures and the existence of the War Merit Pavilion could not be revealed. Lu Yi was only asking about the deity vanquishing sword so he wouldn't break the rules. Shui Yuan replied quickly, You have the deity vanquishing sword? She was puzzled. The deity vanquishing sword and the soul-severing saber disappeared along with eldest senior brother. How did they suddenly appear in youngest junior brother's hands? Or did eldest senior brother hide the treasures somewhere in the sect, waiting for the fated one to come? And youngest junior brother is that fated one? Yes. As for the origin, second senior martial sister, please forgive me. I can't tell you. Shui Yuan naturally wouldn't blame him for this. She replied, The deity vanquishing sword is not a one-time use treasure. Eldest senior brother used it many times to kill enemies. As for how to restore its power, I don't know. Lu Yi frowned. Even Shui Yuan couldn't figure it out. How could she ask the chief? Little junior brother, did a spirit sea realm cultivator make things difficult for you? Shui Yuan's next message followed. Who is it? Shui Yuan didn't think too much when Lu Yi asked about the deity vanquishing sword. But she soon realized that since Lu Yi used the power of the deity vanquishing sword, he must have met a spirit sea realm cultivator. This caused the flames of anger in her heart to surge. As she asked this question, she had already charged out from the front. Lu Yi quickly responded, "Of course not. I was just testing the power of the deity vanquishing sword." Youngest junior brother. Did a spirit sea realm cultivator make things difficult for you? Shui Yuan's next message followed. Who is it? Shui Yuan didn't think too much when Lu Yi asked about the deity vanquishing sword. But she soon realized that since Lu Yi used the power of the deity vanquishing sword, he must have met a spirit sea realm cultivator. This caused the flames of anger in her heart to surge. As she asked this question, she had already charged out from the front. Lu Yi quickly responded, "Of course not. I was just testing the power of the deity vanquishing sword." He couldn't tell his second senior sister that he met a spirit sea realm cultivator when he was on a mission with the A3 team. Otherwise, she wouldn't let it go. Outside the center guard peak, Shui Yuan paused. Is that true? Of course. I'm in Haotian City now. How could a spirit sea realm cultivator make things difficult for me? Shui Yuan's face softened a bit. That's good. I won't interfere in the fight between peers. But if anyone bullies the weak because of their seniority, you must tell me. Second senior sister was still so reliable. Lu Yi quickly said, "Got it." He clicked to download the best book chasing app. Many readers used it to read books aloud. Chapter 907. What Lu Yi could confirm now was that the deity vanquishing sword was not a one-time use rare treasure. However, if this item was not replenished with divine thought, then there was only one possibility that Lu Yi could think of. After packing up, he left his residence with Hu Pu. He asked a random person on the street and went straight to the nearest divine secret hall. There was more than one divine secret hall in the vast sky city. There were 7 or 8 of them scattered around the city to make it convenient for cultivators to enter and borrow the divine secret pillar. There were not many cultivators in vast sky city now. When Lu Yi arrived, there were only a few people in this divine secret hall. They surrounded the divine secret pillar in different directions. Lu Yi waited for a while before an empty seat appeared. He walked forward and pressed his hand on the divine secret pillar. His mind connected to the War Merit Pavilion. The next instant, the projection of his mind appeared in front of the quaint door. The 2 WRMs immediately came to life. Seeing that Lu Yi had thrown fresh beast meat over, they were overjoyed. Lu Yi pushed the door open and entered, leaving them to feast on the meat. He walked straight to the stone platform where he exchanged for the deity vanquishing sword. Lu Yi looked up and saw that there was nothing on the platform. He could not help but frown. He had thought that there was more than one deity vanquishing sword. Just like the Myriad Devil Ridge battlefield imprint, it could be exchanged repeatedly. That was why eldest senior brother could use the deity vanquishing sword so many times back then. This gave others the illusion that this treasure was not a one-time use rare treasure. However, it seemed that things were different from what he had imagined. There was no second deity vanquishing sword on the stone platform. After pondering for a while, he thought of another possibility. Although it was unlikely, he had to try to be sure. He picked up the deity vanquishing sword that had lost its power and placed it on the stone platform in front of him. In the next instant, a piece of information exploded in his heart. Do you want to replenish the deity vanquishing sword's power? 30,000 battle merits. The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. That was indeed the case. The deity vanquishing sword's power could indeed be replenished. However, it was not done by humans but by divine secret. He only needed to bring the used deity vanquishing sword back here, and place it on the stone platform where he exchanged for it. Of course, he would have to pay 30,000 battle achievements in exchange for that. Lu Yi was so angry that he almost laughed. 30,000 points. Why didn't he just rob someone? He did have some battle merits left, enough to replenish the power of the deity vanquishing sword. But this number was a little too big. Back then, he had only spent 26,000 battle achievements to exchange for the deity vanquishing sword. At that time he had thought that it was a bargain. After all, a single tracking disc was worth 30,000 battle merits. The deity vanquishing sword was a rare treasure that could pose a threat to spirit sea realm cultivators. Only now did he realize that this was a trap. The deity vanquishing sword itself was not that expensive. In fact, it gave Lu Yi the illusion that he had picked up a great bargain. However, the cost of using it was not small. The high and mighty heavenly secret gave Lu Yi the impression of a profiteer. However, on second thought, there was a reason why it was so expensive. Take this time as an example. If the deity vanquishing sword had not broken Ning Hu's divine thought by surprise, the A3 team would not have been able to take him down. There might even have been a large number of casualties. The tracking disc was already worth 30,000 battle merits. A rare treasure that could pose a threat to Spirit Sea Realm cultivators should not be cheaper than the tracking disc. Although the battle merits were good, they were nothing compared to a treasure that could save one's life at a critical moment. Lu Yi had spent 180,000 battle merits to exchange for the soul-suppressing pagoda. Was it not to save his own life in front of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator? This time he had encountered Ning Hu. Who knew what other Spirit Sea Realm cultivators he would encounter next time? Hence, no matter what, the deity vanquishing sword's power had to be replenished. He gritted his teeth and chose to replenish it. In the next instant, the stone platform shone brightly. The deity vanquishing sword was engulfed by the light. After a dozen breaths, when the light faded, Lu Yi raised his hand and took out the deity vanquishing sword. He noticed that this rare treasure's transparent blade had an additional spiritual light. The deity vanquishing sword's power had been replenished. Lu Ye's heart was bleeding. He did not have the mood to stay here any longer. He put away the deity vanquishing sword and left the War Merit Pavilion under the earnest advice of the two fled dragons. After walking out of the Divine Secret Hall, Lu Yi looked up at the sky. Just as he was about to return to the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass, a ray of light suddenly landed in front of him. The person cupped his fist and said, "Are you Lu Ye, fellow cultivator Lu?" "That's right." Lu Yi nodded. I am the law commander. The head of the law department has ordered fellow cultivator Lu to meet him immediately. Lord Qian Wudong? Lu Yi was surprised. He did not know why this person was looking for him. The person nodded. Fellow cultivator Lu, if there's nothing else, please go now. Lead the way. Although Lu Yi did not know why Qian Wudong was looking for him, it definitely had something to do with this mission. It seemed that he would not be able to return to the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass today. Lu Yi followed the messenger all the way to the law department. This was a complex of buildings. Many halls were connected to each other. Cultivators hurried in and out from time to time. Many of them seemed to be injured. This made Lu Yi realize how difficult it was for the law department to enforce the law. The messenger led Lu Yi to a hall on the side. Without announcing his arrival, he gestured with his hand. "This way, the head of the law department is waiting for you." Lu Yi nodded in greeting and stepped in. He immediately saw a familiar figure. Every time he saw the head of the law department, Lu Yi would recall the taste of the defiant dragon thorn. His back would ache a little. He walked up and bowed. Lu Yi of the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass greets Lord Qian Wudong. "Please take a seat." Qian Wudong, who was reading documents behind the desk, waved his hand without looking up. Lu Yi walked to the side and sat down. In a flash, a beautiful woman with bright eyes and white teeth served tea. Lu Yi thanked her and took it. The woman looked at him with a smile. Her beautiful eyes revealed a sense of scrutiny. After serving tea, the woman did not leave. Instead, she walked behind Qian Wudong and massaged his shoulders. Then she bent down and whispered something in Qian Wudong's ear. Lu Yi was speechless. He did not know who this woman was to Qian Wudong. It seemed that they were close. However, this was the office of the law department. As the head of the law department, it was inappropriate for him to be so intimate with a woman in public. But it was none of his business. He looked outside and waited quietly. "I have something else to do. You can leave now," Qian Wudong said. The woman stomped her feet and snorted. Then she left unhappily. "Lu Yi." Qian Wudong called again. "Yes, Lord Qian." Lu Yi quickly got up and walked to Qian Wudong. There was a mistake in the information compiled by the intelligence agency for this mission, which caused you to encounter danger. Fortunately, the final result was not bad. I only ordered everyone who experienced this to keep their mouths shut. No one else will know about this mission. You can rest assured. Lu Yi was confused. He did not know what he should rest assured about. Also, I'm interested in something else. Lord Qian, are you referring to? He thought to himself, is this guy interested in the deity vanquishing sword? However, the deity vanquishing sword had to be replenished at the War Merit Pavilion. Other than himself, it was useless for anyone else. Now that the deity vanquishing sword was fully replenished, it could only be used once. After that, it would be made of a special material. Explosive fire spirit rock. Qian Wudong had no idea what Lu Yi was thinking. He did not beat around the bush. I heard that you used an explosive fire spirit rock for this mission. The explosive power is quite impressive. Lu Yi nodded. Yes, there is such a thing. Can I see it? Qian Wudong reached out his hand with a smile. You've already stretched out your hand, how could I not show it to you? As long as he spat out a single word of no, this hand would probably turn into a slap. Moreover, there was nothing shameful about it. Lu Yi took out a fire spirit rock and marked it with explosive spiritual runes. Then he handed it over. Qian Wudong took it and studied it carefully. Then he began to exert force. Sir, please be careful. This thing. Lu Yi wanted to remind Qian Wudong not to use too much force in case the explosive spiritual runes were triggered. However, before he could finish, the fire spirit rock in Qian Wudong's hand exploded. However, there was no explosion. The dazzling fire was condensed between Qian Wudong's fingers. Because it was too compressed, the fire looked like a small sun. After the shockwave dissipated, Qian Wudong looked up and smiled at Lu Yi. What's wrong with this thing? Nothing. What else could Lu Yi say? Qian Wudong was a divine ocean realm cultivator. An explosive fire spirit rock could not hurt him. Even the shockwave was controlled by his fingers. Did you make this yourself? Qian Wudong asked. Lu Yi's movements were so fast that even Qian Wudong didn't notice anything amiss. Yes. Good. Qian Wudong praised. To tell you the truth, many years ago, a spiritual tattooist discovered the magical effect of combining the fire spirit rock and the explosive spiritual runes. This thing also appeared in the front line of the war between the two sides. Use. Lu Yi caught the keyword. He was not surprised that this method had been discovered long ago. It was not a whimsical idea, but a simple combination of spiritual stones and spiritual tattoos. Since ancient times, there had been so many spiritual tattooists, so it was natural that someone had discovered it earlier than him. Yes, but too many people died. Later on, no one made it. Too many spiritual tattooists died. Lu Yi grasped the key point immediately. Qian Wudong nodded. The fire spirit rock is not stable. There is a risk of failure when constructing the spiritual runes. No matter how skilled a spiritual tattooist is, he or she cannot guarantee that he or she will succeed. According to the information I got, you are a spiritual tattooist. So you should know what will happen if someone fails to construct the explosive spiritual runes in the fire spirit rock. Once the spiritual runes fail, the spiritual energy in the fire spirit rock will go berserk. Then it will cause an explosion. Brother Shen. Yes. Shen Zhongqing walked on the road. When he met people he knew, he would greet them or nod to them. But no matter who it was, no one had any extra expression on their faces. It was as if they were indifferent to everything. To this, Shen Zhongqing was used to it. Because this was the Demon Suppression Department, an organization that maintained the stability of the Great Qin dynasty. Their main duty was to kill demons and monsters. Of course, they also had other side jobs. Could be said that, in the Demon Suppression Department, everyone's hands were stained with blood. When a person was used to life and death, he or she would become indifferent to many things. When he first came to this world, Shen Zhongqing was not used to it. But as time passed, he got used to it. The Demon Suppression Department was very big. Those who could stay in the Demon Suppression Department were all powerful masters or people who had the potential to become masters. Shen Zhongqing belonged to the latter. There were two professions in the Demon Suppression Department. One was the Guardian, the other was the Demon Slayer. Anyone who entered the Demon Suppression Department would start from the lowest level, the Demon Slayer. Then, they would be promoted step by step until they finally had a chance to become a Guardian. Shen Zhongqing's previous life was a trainee Demon Slayer in the Demon Suppression Department. He was also the lowest-level demon slayer. He had the memories of his previous life. He was also very familiar with the environment of the demon suppression department. It didn't take long for Shen Zhongqing to stop in front of a pavilion. Different from the other places in the demon suppression department that were filled with killing intent, this pavilion was like a crane in a flock of chickens. In the demon suppression department that was filled with blood, it presented a different kind of tranquility. At this moment, the door of the pavilion was open. Occasionally, people would enter and leave. Shen Zhongqing only hesitated for a moment before stepping in. Entering the pavilion, the environment suddenly changed. A burst of ink mixed with a faint smell of blood assaulted his senses, causing his brows to instinctively furrow, but they quickly smoothed out. The smell of blood on everyone in the demon suppression department was almost impossible to wash away. Chapter 908. With the combination of the fire spiritual rock and the exploding spiritual tattoo, the power of the explosion was not weak. Even a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator could withstand it once, but he would not be able to withstand it if it happened too many times. As for a true Lake Realm spiritual tattooist, needless to say, one explosion was enough to injure him. After 3 to 5 explosions, even if he did not die, he would be bedridden. That's why I'm curious. How did you make so many exploding fire spiritual rocks? Qian Wudong looked at Lu Yi. My success rate in constructing spirit tattoos is higher? Lu Yi couldn't tell Qian Wudong that it was impossible for him to fail. Even if he said so, Qian Wudong wouldn't believe him. A spiritual tattooist building spiritual tattoos was the same as an alchemist making elixirs. No matter how skilled a spiritual tattooist was, there was still a possibility of failure. Qian Wudong couldn't help laughing. A Spirit Sea Realm spiritual tattooist has an 80% success rate of constructing explosive tattoos in a fire spiritual stone. How high can you be? However, once the construction fails, it will inevitably lead to terrible consequences. I want to know how you were able to protect yourself from the explosion of the spirit stone and escape unscathed. This was the reason why he had called Lu Yi over this time. If this problem could be solved, Haotian Alliance would have one more way to deal with their enemies. This was of great strategic value. Lu Yi was in a dilemma. Qian Wudong thought he had a way to avoid the explosion of the fire spiritual rock, but that was not the case at all. How could he explain this? After thinking for a while, Lu Yi could only say, I have my own unique way. You can't tell me? Qian Wudong looked at him with a faint smile. Don't worry. I won't ask you for nothing. If you can share your way and solve this problem for the prefecture guards, you will be rewarded handsomely, including but not limited to military exploits. Lu Yi felt a headache coming. He didn't know how to respond. Finally, he said helplessly, Sir, it's not that I want to hide it from you. It's just that no one else can use my way. Even if I share it, it's useless. Sir, you don't believe me. All right, I'll ask Tianji to bear witness. If my way can be used by others, please punish me. After a moment of silence, Lu Yi said again, Sir, you should believe me now. In the 9 regions, the Heavenly Secret Oath could sometimes help cultivators resolve some doubts and unnecessary disputes. Under the witness of the Heavenly Secret, no one could lie. Qian Wudong didn't expect Lu Yi to be so straightforward. It seemed that Lu Yi didn't lie to him. Qian Wudong was the only one who could use his methods, so there was no point in sharing it with others. He sighed and couldn't help but reveal a disappointed expression. If that's the case, then it's fine. You may leave. Yes. Lu Yi heaved a sigh of relief and turned to leave. But when he reached the door, he suddenly turned back. Anything else? Qian Wudong looked at him in confusion. Lu Yi said, Sir, if you want explosive fire spirit rocks, I can help you refine them. Gan Wudong couldn't help but laugh. How much can you make by yourself? If he were to do it alone, the production would be limited, and it would lose its value. Sir, how much do you think we can refine every day to satisfy our needs? Lu Yi asked instead of answering. Qian Wudong looked at Lu Yi and realized that the latter was seriously discussing this issue with him. Qian Wudong said, Of course, the more the better. But if you were the only one making them, would you be able to produce 1,000 pieces a day? He thought Qian Wudong was going to ask for a lot. It was only 1,000 pieces. If he wanted to refine them, it would be a simple matter. 1,000 explosive fire spirit rocks would take less than an hour. Qian Wudong was a minister. How could his appetite be so small? But Lu Yi also knew that it was best to stop before going too far. Qian Wudong didn't think he could refine 1,000 pieces per day. Everyone's energy was limited, and there was a certain amount of risk involved. If he said too much, Qian Wudong might not believe him. Even if Qian Wudong did believe him, Qian Wudong would be suspicious. It should be possible. Qian Wudong was shocked. Really? If he could refine 1,000 pieces per day, then he could make 30,000 pieces per month. It was more than enough to equip a minister of law. It's related to the future of our province. I'm willing to try my best. Lu Yi answered firmly. Good. Qian Wudong nodded approvingly as if the Force province had a successor. But Lu Ye's next sentence exposed his real purpose. Sir, it takes a lot of time and effort for me to refine. Shouldn't the prefecture guards do something for me? Qian Wudong couldn't help but laugh when he heard Lu Ye's blunt words. Of course. Qian Wudong thought for a while and said, what do you think? The materials will be provided by the prefecture guards. Every time you refine a piece of explosive fire spirit rock, you'll be rewarded with 1 battle credit. Lu Yi turned around and left. 2 points. Qian Wudong was speechless. Lu Yi didn't give him any face at all. Lu Yi didn't stop walking. 1 explosive fire spirit rock was worth 2 battle credits. 1,000 pieces per day would be 2,000 battle credits. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small amount either. The main reason was that Lu Yi could refine it in an hour. In this way, he could earn 60,000 battle credits in 1 month. However, this was not what Lu Yi had expected. Most importantly, it was rare to come across such an opportunity. Naturally, he would try to get as many benefits as he could. Such opportunities were rare. Name your price. Qian Wudong was helpless. Seeing that Lu Yi was about to walk out of the Ear Palace, he hurriedly said. Lu Yi turned around and raised his hand. He opened his hand and flipped it over. You little bastard! How dare you ask for so much? Qian Wudong was furious. He was the head of the law department, in charge of the laws of the prefecture guards. His words were like a mountain. Since when did anyone dare to bargain with him? He glared at Lu Yi and softened his tone. Kid, you should know that you're a member of the prefecture guards. The things you refine can improve the strength of the prefecture guards. When the prefecture guards get stronger, you can benefit from it. Sir, I know that. But if you want the horse to run, you have to feed the horse. Although I'm the head of the law department, I have to put the law department and the prefecture guards first. I can't accept your price. Raise the price on the spot and return the money as the fall. That's how business works. You little bastard. Qian Wudong gritted his teeth. 3 points. 1 spiritual stone is 3 points. You can earn 3,000 points a day. That's 90,000 points a month. Lu Yi shook his head. My lord, let's not talk about the risks involved in refining this item for now. It will take a lot of time and delay my cultivation. I sacrificed my future for the sake of the prefectural guard. My lord, you can't let me suffer a loss. I want battle points to buy the golden spirit lot to make up for my lagging cultivation progress. How can a golden spirit lot that costs 90,000 battle points a month make up for it? Qian Wudong thought that it made sense. He sighed. 5 points. That's my limit. Any more and we won't talk. Let's make a Tianji contract. Lu Yi agreed without hesitation. 5 points for an explosive fire spiritual stone was the price he expected. You're so sure that you can complete the task? Qian Wudong looked at him suspiciously. You should know that once you make a Tianji contract, you'll be punished if you can't complete the task. That's my business. Sir, just wait and see. Since you're so confident, I'll do as you wish. Qian Wudong waved his hand and a blank Tianji contract fell down with a golden light. He quickly listed out the terms and conditions for Lu Yi to read. After both of them made sure there were no problems, they both left their marks. With that, the Tianji contract was made. Sir, there's one more thing I need to tell you, Lu Yi said. The Tianji contract has been made. You can't raise the price. Sir, you're underestimating me. What I want to tell you is that there's a loss when making this thing. I know that. But the loss rate can't be more than 30%. Lu Yi was overjoyed, but he pretended to be troubled. I'll try my best. Now he didn't have to worry about the fire spiritual stones he needed for his talent tree. The loss rate couldn't be more than 30%. In other words, he could pocket 30% of the stones. This wasn't his original intention, but if he had a 100% success rate, he wouldn't be able to explain it to others. 70% would be the best. Sir, when can we start? Lu Yi couldn't wait. He didn't expect that this trip to Vast Sky City would not only provide him with a stable way to earn battle credits, but also fire spiritual stones. This was a great deal. If you think it's okay now, we can start now. I'll listen to you, sir. Come with me. Qian Wudong led Lu Yi out of the Ear Palace and flew up. He wrapped Lu Yi in his spiritual power and flew in a certain direction. Soon they landed in a small courtyard. This is the property of the Law Division. Normally, it is used by the injured cultivators of the Law Division to recuperate. You will live here for the time being. I will have someone deliver the fire spirit stones. I will not ask about the process, only the result. In 7 days, someone will come to collect them. Lu Yi nodded. There was no problem with this arrangement. Qian Wudong soon left, leaving Lu Yi alone. He could finally come out and take a breather. The courtyard wasn't big. Lu Yi set up some arrays to guard it. As soon as he finished, there was a knock on the door. Lu Yi got up and opened the door. A cultivator he didn't know was standing outside. He handed over a storage bag. Lu Yi took it and checked it. There were 10,000 fire spiritual stones inside. He nodded. No problem. The cultivator didn't say anything. He cupped his fists and left. Qian Wudong had ordered his men to deliver 10,000 pieces of fire spiritual stones to Lu Yi, and the delivery time was 7 days later. Obviously, he had taken 30% of the cost into account. Therefore, after 7 days, Lu Yi only needed to give Qian Wudong 7,000 pieces of fire spiritual stones to complete the mission. By then, Lu Yi would have 35,000 battle achievements. This didn't include the remaining 3,000 fire spiritual stones. Lu Yi walked into the room and set up another array. Time to work. Chapter 909. It wasn't difficult for Lu Yi to inscribe explosive spiritual tattoos on fire spirit stones. Therefore, he held a fire spirit stone in each hand. The one in his left hand was for inscribing explosive spiritual tattoos, while the one in his right hand was for his talent tree to devour. Not only that, there was also a spiritual energy vortex in front of him, and many small funnels on his body. He was the only one in the world who could do two things at the same time while cultivating. As for what he said in front of Qian Wudong about sacrificing his own future for the prefecture guards, it was impossible. Cultivation was always the most important thing in a cultivator's cultivation. Lu Yi understood this a long time ago. He couldn't do anything that would delay his cultivation, no matter how great the benefits were. Time flew by. In just half a day, all 7,000 exploding fire spirit stones had been refined, and Lu Yi refined another 200 before stopping. The number couldn't be fixed, or else it would be too ugly. 10,000 raw materials to produce 7,200 explosive fire spirit stones. This result was very impressive. Qian Wudong gave him 7 days, and he couldn't leave the rest of the time, so he could only continue cultivating. He didn't imprint the origin of the soaring dragon realm, but took out the core of the breath fruit and prepared to enter the mirage to train. Since he reached the true lake stage, he hadn't entered the mirage, so there weren't many places to test his strength. Moreover, he had obtained many new spiritual tattoos, so Lu Yi wanted to train in the mirage and familiarize himself with the effects of these spiritual tattoos. Lu Yi was especially looking forward to the spiritual tattoo of Split Shadow. Among the 7 new spiritual tattoos he obtained last time, this was the only one that could be used in a one-on-one battle. He channeled his spiritual energy into the core of the breath fruit. His vision blurred, and he appeared in the familiar small space. There was a door on each side, one of which led to the training ground, and the other to the Immortal Essence City. Opening the gate to enter the Immortal Origin City required 10,000 merit points. Lu Yi naturally wouldn't open it easily. Moreover, the last time he returned from the Immortal Origin City, the City Lord had said that he was already a member of the Jufu team. If there was a battle, the City Lord would use some special means to remind him. When the time came, he would directly enter the Immortal Origin City to participate in the battle. Until now, Lu Yi hadn't received any notifications from the Immortal Essence City, so it should be quite peaceful there. Calculating the time, it had only been a few months since the last battle. Lu Yi turned his gaze to the other door, and he raised his hand to push it. The door light flowed, and a line of words immediately. Lu Yi's Tiest. Its price again. When he had obtained the breath fruit core when he had been at the spirit stream tier, it had cost him 50 merit points each time he used it. Now that he had reached the Cloud River tier, he needed to spend 100 merit points. Now that he was in the True Lake stage, the contribution points required to enter the Mirage had indeed increased. This was the same as the price increase in the Cloud River tier. It was doubled from its original base price. 200 merit points. The current Lu Yi naturally wouldn't care about a mere 200 contribution points. Without any hesitation, he pushed open the door and stepped into the rolling fog. The process of tempering was dull and tedious. It was nothing more than an endless stream of enemies charging out of the mist, only to be killed by Lu Yi. To Lu Ye's surprise, the opponents he encountered this time were no longer limited to human cultivators and insectoids. Two peculiar races, the Blood Race and the Corpse Race, had appeared among their opponents. The Blood Clan was the enemy he encountered in the Soaring Dragon Realm, and the Corpse Clan was the enemy of the Wushuang continent. There was no reason for them not to appear before, but now they suddenly appeared. Lu Yi guessed that the enemies that appeared in the core of the breath fruit were most likely related to the previous experiences of the cultivators who entered this place. Because he had encountered the Blood Race and the Corpse Race, enemies of these two races would also appear here. If he encountered any other messy races in the future, the mirage in the core of the breath fruit should also be able to reflect it. His cultivation had increased to the True Lake realm. In addition, Lu Yi had made great progress in his saber techniques, mastered new spirit patterns, and comprehended the second style of the Tyrant Saber technique. This tempering could be said to be a fruitful experience. Only the moment when he was exhausted and killed, the pain was unbearable. That was the real feeling of death. Lu Yi engraved this feeling in his heart. Only in this way could he maintain sufficient vigilance in the real world. In the mirage, no matter how many times he died, only his mind would be damaged. In reality, he only had one life. Time flew by and 7 days had passed. The cultivator who sent the Fire Spirit Stone arrived as scheduled, and took away the exploding Fire Spirit Stone that Lu Yi gave him. After a while, Lu Yi felt some movement in the battlefield imprint. He lowered his head to check. His name, identity, and cultivation had not changed. Needless to say, the location change was nothing more than the change from the Blue Flame Mountain Pass to the vast sky city of the military province. In the contribution column, more than 100,000 contribution points were reduced, leaving more than 350,000. After all, cultivating like this every day and entering the mirage to temper himself again and again consumed a lot. The most important thing was that in the contribution column 27, his strength was a little higher. Originally, after replenishing the power of the God-vanquishing sword, he only had a little more than 100,000 contribution points left. But just a few days ago, he gained another 130,000 contribution points. Needless to say, it was the reward from this time's mission with the A3 team. It was impossible for a normal mission to have such a big harvest, but this time there were many problems and troubles. In the end, a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator was captured and killed by the A3 squad. Naturally, the reward would be greatly increased. Moreover, on the way back, King Gengwu said that he would report to the division leader and ask the division leader to ask the division leader to ask the division leader to reduce everyone's contribution points by half and give it to Lu Yi. With all these reasons combined, Lu Yi was able to get such a generous reward. According to the original mission, the A3 team went out to carry out a mission to capture a 9th-order True Lake Realm cultivator. The best reward would be 10 to 20,000 contribution points per person. But this time, even if their harvest was reduced by half and given to Lu Yi, the contribution points were still more than expected. at least 20 to 30,000. And the extra contribution points just now were naturally from refining the exploding fire spirit stone, a total of 36,000 points. With all these factors, Lu Ye's contribution points were more than 270,000. In the entire 9 states, there was no one else like Lu Yi who could continuously obtain such a large amount of contribution points. Otherwise, he would not have been promoted to the rank of commandant when he was still in the True Lake realm. Just as Lu Yi was checking his battle merits, Wei Ling suddenly made a move. Lu Yi checked and found that it was Gan Wudong who gave him an order through Wei Ling, ordering him to go to the law department immediately. Wei Ling was like a mountain. Lu Yi could bargain with Gan Wudong on the exploding fire spirit stone issue, but he did not dare to be careless at this moment. He immediately rushed to the law department. Soon he saw Gan Wudong from last time. Compared to last time, Gan Wudong's attitude was undoubtedly much warmer this time. When he saw Lu Yi, he patted his shoulder affectionately and said, "Well done." Although they had signed the Tianji contract and had an agreement, when the results were right in front of him, Gan Wudong was certain that Lu Yi really had the ability to refine 1,000 exploding fire spirit stones a day. With these things, the law department's enforcement team would have one more way to deal with enemies when they were out on missions. It would also reduce the number of casualties imperceptibly. Previously, because of Lu Ye's haggling with him, that little bit of unhappiness had long since disappeared. "As long as you're satisfied, sir," Lu Yi replied. "I'll give you a day off. You can continue refining tomorrow, but I have to tell you that you can't fall behind in your cultivation. You have to know that the higher your cultivation, the higher the efficiency of your refining." Lu Yi thought to himself that refining this thing did not seem to have much to do with his cultivation, but there was no need to say such things out loud. Soon he realized something was wrong. "Sir, I have to stay in Haotian City to refine exploding fire spirit stones in the future? What's wrong?" Gan Wudong looked at him in confusion. Lu Yi said, "Sir, did you forget that I'm from Tsangyan Mountain Pass? I only asked for a day off to get promoted, but I've been delayed for almost 10 days already. Although the leader of the risk team did not ask me to return, I can't just stay here forever. Wouldn't that be desertion?" He still carried the identity of Tsangyan Mountain Pass Guard and Patrol Guard of Great Moon Pass. Of course, with his promotion, he had now become the Guan Commandant and the Patrol Commandant. If he stayed here for a long time, the monthly salary he could get with these two identities would definitely be gone. This was unacceptable to Lu Yi. Just these two identities alone gave him a monthly salary of 60,000 battle merits. Gan Wudong looked at him in shock, speechless for a moment. He was so happy that he completely forgot about this. Suddenly he felt like his heart was being stabbed by a knife. Such a talent is not from my law division. Damn it, why was this brat only a Cloud River Realm 9th Order when he came to Haotian City and not a True Lake Realm cultivator? If Lu Yi was a True Lake Realm cultivator at that time, Gan Wudong would have recruited him into the law division. Lu Yi did not notice the change in Gan Wudong's expression and said, "Sir, how about this? You give me the fire spirit stones and I'll take them back to Tsangyan Mountain Pass to refine. Every once in a while you can send someone to pick them up. Although it's a bit troublesome, it's the only way I can think of." Gan Wudong raised his hand and stopped him. "Wait a moment." Saying so, he raised his hand and tapped his battlefield mark to send a message, but no one knew who he was sending it to. Lu Yi stood quietly to the side. Gan Wudong walked back and forth with his hands behind his back, looking a little anxious. He sent a few more messages, but they all seemed to have sunk into the sea. Helpless, Gan Wudong could only look at Lu Yi. "Use the guard token to contact your mountain pass master. Tell her I have something to discuss with her." Last time when King Gengwu asked him to transfer Lu Yi back from the front line to join Team A3, he was afraid that Thought Moon Immortal would crack his skull open, so he did not dare to agree. But after discovering that Lu Yi had the ability to refine fire spirit stones in large quantities, his desire for talent finally overcame his fear. He wanted to take a risk, but he did not expect that Thought Moon Immortal would ignore him, which was very awkward. "Brother Shan." Shan Zhongqing walked on the road, and when he met someone he knew, he would greet them or nod to them. But no matter who it was, no one had any extra expression on their face, as if they were indifferent to everything. To this, Shen Zhongqing was already used to it, because this was the Demon Suppression Department, an organization that maintained the stability of the Great Qin Empire. Their main duty was to kill demons and monsters, but of course they also had some other side jobs. Could be said that, in the Demon Suppression Department, everyone's hands were stained with blood. When a person was used to life and death, they would become indifferent to many things. When he first came to this world, Shen Zhongqing was not used to it, but as time passed he got used to it. The Demon Suppression Department was very big. Those who could stay in the Demon Suppression Department were all powerful experts, or people who had the potential to become experts. Shen Zhongqing belonged to the latter. Among them, the Demon Suppression Department was divided into two professions. One was the guardian, the other was the demon exorcist. Anyone who entered the Demon Suppression Department would start from the lowest level, the demon exorcist. Then, step by step, they would be promoted to the position of guardian. Shen Zhongqing's previous life was a trainee demon exorcist in the Demon Suppression Department, which was also the lowest level of demon exorcist. He had the memories of his previous life. He was also very familiar with the environment of the Demon Suppression Department. It didn't take long for Shen Zhongqing to stop in front of a pavilion. Different from the other places in the Demon Suppression Department that were filled with killing intent, this pavilion was like a crane in a flock of chickens. In the Demon Suppression Department that was filled with blood, it presented a different kind of tranquility. At this moment, the door of the pavilion was open, and people occasionally came in and out. Shen Zhongqing only hesitated for a moment before stepping in. Entering the pavilion, the environment suddenly changed. A burst of ink mixed with a faint smell of blood assaulted his senses, causing his brows to instinctively furrow, but quickly relax. The smell of blood on everyone in the Demon Suppression Department was almost impossible to wash clean. Chapter 9-10. After hearing Gan Wudong's words, Lu Yi realized that Gan Wudong had sent a message to Nian Yuxian. Even though they hadn't known each other for a long time, Lu Yi knew her temperament. If she didn't want to talk to someone, she wouldn't respond no matter how hard that person tried. Gan Wudong obviously couldn't reach Nian Yuxian, and wanted Lu Yi to pass on the message. Lu Yi had no choice but to use the Wei token to contact Nian Yuxian. Soon Nian Yuxian got a response. Seeing this, Gan Wudong was speechless. "My lord, how should I respond?" Lu Yi looked up at Gan Wudong. "Tell her I have something urgent to talk to her about," Gan Wudong ordered. Lu Yi did as he was told and looked up at Gan Wudong with a strange expression. "What?" My lord asked you to leave," Lu Yi reported. Gan Wudong was speechless. Lu Yi was also speechless. Two Divine Sea Realm cultivators were using him as a messenger, especially one of them who didn't sound nice. What was going on? "Also my lord asked me to return to the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass in 2 days. I can't stay for any reason," Lu Yi continued. Gan Wudong sighed. The Wei token had been given and Nian Yuxian couldn't be contacted. Lu Yi couldn't stay. Gan Wudong thought about it and agreed to Lu Ye's suggestion. "Let's do as you said. Every 7 days, I will send someone to the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass to get the goods. If you need to go out, let me know in advance." "Yes, sir." Lu Yi obeyed the order. "These are the materials you need for the next 7 days." Gan Wudong threw a storage bag to Lu Yi. Lu Yi took it and checked it. There were 10,000 fire spiritual stones inside. After leaving the law department, Lu Yi didn't leave for the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass immediately. Instead, he sent a message to King Zhenggu and the others and asked them to come out for a small gathering. A few days ago, when the members of Team A3 recovered from their injuries, they asked Lu Yi about it. In any case, everyone could be considered to have gone through life and death together, and the mission was more than completed, so it was naturally worth celebrating. But at that time, Lu Yi had been ordered to refine the exploding fire spirit stone, so it wasn't convenient for him to leave at will, so he delayed the time. Now that he was about to return to the Ash Flame Mountain Pass, he naturally had to fulfill his promise. The location of the gathering was chosen by King Zhenggu. It was in a restaurant in Great Sky City. There was nothing special about the gathering between cultivators. It was nothing more than drinking and chatting casually. When they were in the mood, they would come down and show off their skills. It was quite a lively scene. Their feelings for each other increased slightly. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Lu Yi went to the divination hall. The Pan Mountain saber was repaired. After retrieving the Pan Mountain saber, Lu Ye's heart also calmed down. Without the Pan Mountain saber by his side, he always felt that something was missing. Now that the saber had returned to him, it was finally complete. Without any hesitation, he circulated his spiritual energy and soared into the sky, heading straight for the vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass. On the way here, they encountered the cultivators from the mysterious organization. However, on the way back, it was a smooth journey without any mishaps. In the evening, they finally arrived at the vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass and headed straight for the spiritual peak, where the moon-yearning immortal bamboo house was located. From afar, he saw the thought moon immortal sitting by the window on the second floor. She seemed to be bored. She supported her face with one hand and looked in the direction he came from. When their eyes met, the thought moon immortal immediately retracted her gaze and fiddled with her fingers. Lu Yi came to the bottom of the bamboo building, cupped his fists and said in a low voice, "My lord, I have returned from my leave to report to you." The thought moon immortal responded softly. She continued to look at her slender white fingers, as if there was a flower on them. Below, Lu Yi maintained his salute and waited for a moment. Seeing that she had no other orders, he said, "I will take my leave." He turned and walked towards his bamboo building. Behind him, the thought moon immortal opened her mouth. She wanted to ask him how he felt during this mission with the law department team, and whether he encountered any danger. However, in the end she did not ask. After living alone for so many years, she had long forgotten how to properly communicate with others. She did not expect that the mission Lu Yi carried out along the way would actually kill a spirit sea realm cultivator. After returning from the Great Sky City, the days passed peacefully. Every day besides cultivating, Lu Yi fed the innate skill tree fire spirit stones. Then he took Yi and Hooper to patrol outside for an hour. Although he also knew that patrolling near the vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass would not yield any results, he still had to be worthy of his monthly salary as a patrol captain. If he did not patrol like this, he would be embarrassed to take the 30,000 battle merits monthly salary. The thought moon immortal was still the same as before. She appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Lu Yi often did not see her for several days. Occasionally when they met they would just bow and pass by. Nothing happened at the vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass, but another major event occurred in the 9 states. The Cloud River battlefield was reopened. Calculating the time, it had been almost 2 months since the fusion of the realms. It was indeed about time to end it. The reopening of the Cloud River battlefield meant that there would be a large number of Cloud River tier cultivators, leaving the major passes at the front line. After all, for Cloud River tier cultivators, the Cloud River battlefield was their main home. Of course, not every Cloud River tier cultivator would go to the Cloud River battlefield. There was never a lack of cultivators at the major passes who thirsted for battle merits. Not to mention Cloud River tier cultivators, there were even Spirit Stream tier cultivators. After all, no matter how high one's cultivation was, as long as one joined the military state guard, they would have their own military rank and position, and could receive a monthly salary. There were also things that Cloud River tier and Spirit Stream tier cultivators could do at the various major passes. Receiving a monthly salary and exchanging it for spirit sticks to cultivate, the speed of cultivation would not fall behind too much. Compared to this major event that belonged to the 9 states, something had also happened in the military state. The Ziwei Dao Palace had established a sect. On that day, they announced to the military state that they had acknowledged the Jade Blood Sect as their superior sect. They had chosen 30 peaks in the Fragrant Mountain as their foundation, and would help the Jade Blood Sect. When the news spread, it did attract some attention. But that was all. Putting aside the fact that the Ziwei Dao Palace was a sect from the Peerless Continent, there were not many elites in the sect that could be brought out. Even the Jade Blood Sect had long since lost its former glory. The combination of these two sects was like a newborn baby relying on an old man, and it did not attract much attention from those powerful forces. Fortunately, the old man had a wide network, so on the day of the Ziwei Dao Palace's opening, there were many divine C-tier cultivators from large sects who came to congratulate them, and the scene was very lively. It also let the cultivators from the peerless continent of the Ziwei Dao Palace truly feel the power of the divine sea tier. Inside the bamboo building, Lu Yi sat cross-legged, holding a fire spirit stone in each hand, urging the power of the talent tree to continuously absorb it. His expression was normal, but his heart was filled with anticipation. There was no other reason. The transformation of the talent tree seemed to be completed. It was finally going to be completed. It had been more than a month since he sensed the signs of the talent tree's transformation in the volcano of Mount Songyan. During this time, Lu Yi had consumed countless fire spirit stones. More than half of what he had obtained from the underground cave had been fed to the talent tree, and the consumption could be said to be incomparably huge. He had originally thought that with the harvest from the underground cave, he would no longer have to worry about the fuel for the talent tree in the future, but now it seemed that he had thought too simply. With such a large consumption, he had also become more aware of the transformation of the talent tree. Now that the transformation was imminent, he wholeheartedly devoted himself to this matter, and even put aside the matter of cultivation. Another half a day later, after consuming an unknown number of fire spirit stones and immersing his mind, the talent tree hidden in his source aperture suddenly shone brightly, its roots swaying. In an instant, Lu Yi clearly sensed the existence of the talent tree for the first time. He could not sense it before. Although the talent tree had always been hidden in his source aperture, and he could see it every time he immersed his mind, Lu Yi did not feel its existence at all. Until now, Lu Yi clearly sensed that there was a magical thing coexisting with him in his source aperture. Was the transformation complete? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Yi was a little dumbfounded, because the talent tree suddenly shrank violently, and in the blink of an eye, turned into a ball of flame. Rather than a flame, it was more appropriate to call it a fire seed, because its shape was like a seed. That was not the end of it. The seed burned fiercely and suddenly the flames exploded. As the flames churned, the seed sprouted, grew, and then a big tree appeared in his vision. Lu Yi focused his mind, and only now was he finally sure that the talent tree had completed its transformation. But it did not seem to have changed much. The unlit leaves on the talent tree were still shrouded in darkness, but the lit leaves seemed to be brighter. Other than that, there was nothing special. The roots seemed to have become more lush. That's it? Lu Ye's heart sank to the bottom. He had spent a huge amount of fire spirit stones, and more than half of what he had harvested in the underground cave on the talent tree's transformation. He had worked hard for more than a month, and in the end, that's it? No, it shouldn't be like this. He immediately calmed his mind, and as expected, he soon felt something different. In the past, he could not sense the existence of the talent tree, and naturally could not sense the various things inside the talent tree. But now it was different. He could sense the existence of this divine object itself, and through the talent tree, he could sense the various things inside. For example, the amount of fuel stored. The talent tree had just completed its transformation, so there was naturally no fuel stored inside. There was some before, but it was all used up during the transformation process. At this moment, as the power of the fire spirit stones in his hands continued to be consumed, the fuel in the talent tree also began to accumulate. Continuing to sense it calmly, Lu Ye's expression quickly changed. Although he could not explain it clearly, he seemed to have sensed some changes in the talent tree, and the external appearance of these changes. With that thought, he immediately took out a mid-grade spirit stone, held it in his hand, and then activated the talent tree's power and focused his mind to observe. The next moment, a scene that made him happy and shocked appeared. Invisible roots that only he could see extended from his palm and wrapped around the mid-grade spirit stone. When he thought about it, a powerful suction force came from those tiny roots. The spiritual power in the mid-grade spirit stone disappeared at a terrifying speed and flowed into Lu Ye's body through the roots. He had caught a cold and all kinds of discomfort. Chapter 9:11. The spiritual energy in the middle-grade spirit stone was quickly devoured and turned into powder that fell from Lu Ye's fingertips. Lu Ye quickly took out another one. It was still the same. After the transformation, the talent tree had the ability to devour spiritual energy from spirit stones. In the past, the talent tree could only absorb fire elemental energy, such as the earth core fire and the fire spirit stone. It would not react to non-fire elemental energy. But now, with the transformation of the talent tree, the ability of the talent tree had also changed. It was no longer limited to fire elemental energy. If a true lake stage cultivator used a middle-grade spirit stone like this, it would last at least half a day. But in Lu Ye's hands, it only took a moment for the spiritual energy to be used up. This meant that Lu Yi could absorb the energy from the spirit stone at an incredible speed for his own use. Whether it was for cultivation or recovery, the time spent would be greatly reduced. In other words, with this method, Lu Ye's efficiency in cultivation and recovery was not something that cultivators of the same stage could compare to. It was more than 10 times faster. Because of the existence of the spirit gathering funnel, his cultivation speed was much faster than cultivators of the same stage. Now that he had this ability, his cultivation efficiency would increase by a lot. Fast cultivation speed and high efficiency meant that he could use a shorter time to reach a higher stage. For cultivators, this was simply a dream come true. But while absorbing the spiritual energy from the spirit stone, Lu Yi also noticed that the fuel stored in the talent tree was also rapidly depleting. It seemed that the fire spiritual energy stored in the talent tree was not only used to burn the impurities, but also to maintain the power of the talent tree. After all, the spiritual energy absorbed from the spirit stone was extremely pure with almost no impurities. It did not need the talent tree to burn and refine it. But the fuel stored in the talent tree was still rapidly depleting. This was undoubtedly a problem. Lu Yi did not notice this before. First, he could not detect the amount of fuel stored in the talent tree. Second, he did not have such a cultivation method. This meant that if he wanted to use the spirit stone to increase his cultivation speed in the future, he would have to consume the fire spirit stone at the same time. Lu Yi could not help but feel lucky that he made the deal with Gan Wudong in Grand Sky City. Otherwise, with the fire spirit stone in his hand, he would not be able to maintain it for long. Initially, he only needed the fire spirit rock to activate the spirit runes on the talent tree. Although he needed a lot, it was fine as long as he had enough. But now, if he needed to use it to cultivate, there would be no end to it. Under such circumstances, it was naturally important to have a stable channel to obtain fire spirit stones. He and Hu Po were dumbfounded as they watched one mid-grade spirit stone after another being consumed. They didn't know what method Lu Yi was using to be able to consume spirit stones so quickly. Lu Yi didn't bother to explain, but in the blink of an eye, she saw Hu Po chewing on his Yao core, crunching it loudly. A bold idea suddenly popped up in his mind. Under Hu Po's confused gaze, he reached into the storage bag around Hu Po's neck and took out a Yao core. Holding it in his hand, he activated the power of his talent tree. Roots spread out and wrapped around the Yao core. In the next moment, a rich power was extracted from the Yao core and poured into Lu Ye's body. As the spiritual power circulated, it was refined by the talent tree and turned into pure energy. It really works. Lu Yi was shocked. It was just a sudden thought. The talent tree was no longer limited to absorbing fire-type energy. Since spirit stones could do it, then wouldn't it work with Yao cores? He didn't expect it to work. Sensing the change in the Yao core in Lu Ye's hand, Yi covered her red lips. Hu Po's tiger eyes widened even more. The energy stored in a Yao core was undoubtedly much greater than that of a mid-grade spirit stone. After all, it was the essence of a demon's lifetime of cultivation. It wasn't something a mid-grade spirit stone could compare to. But even so, it only lasted for a cup of tea's time before it completely dried up. What was left in Lu Ye's hand was only a dry mass of impurities the size of a jujube pit. Lu Yi was excited. After the transformation, the talent tree was no longer limited to absorbing fire-type energy. Spirit stones could do it, Yao cores could do it too. Could the spiritual power in a cultivator's body work as well? Lu Yi immediately extinguished this horrifying thought as soon as it appeared in his mind. Although he was very sure that the talent tree could absorb the spiritual power in a cultivator's body for its own use, doing so would be no different from eating people. There was still a huge psychological barrier. Lu Yi secretly warned himself that he couldn't open this trap. Once he did, it was very likely to lead to some extremely bad consequences. Under Hu Po's vigilant gaze, Lu Yi took out another Yao core from his storage bag. He examined it for a moment, then threw it directly into his mouth. Every time he saw Hupa eating so enthusiastically, he had long wanted to taste a Yao core. Lu Yi couldn't hold back anymore and exclaimed. Hupo's eyes were about to pop out. Master, how can you eat a Yao core? That's my snack. Lu Yi was surprised to find that the Yao core tasted pretty good. There wasn't any special smell. He swallowed it whole and quietly activated the talent tree's power. The roots in his abdomen twisted and quickly absorbed the energy in the Yao core. Gluttony's feast was also activated, and a buzzing sound was heard. In just a moment, the energy in the Yao core was completely digested. This was much more efficient than letting the talent tree absorb it. Lu Yi, are you alright? He asked with concern. She couldn't understand why Lu Yi would suddenly make such a rash move. Yao cores were generally used to refine pills and set up formations. Yao beasts would also eat Yao cores of the same category, but she had never heard of this thing being eaten by humans. I'm fine, Lu Yi comforted. I have an extra ability. I can digest it, don't worry. Yi was relieved when she heard him say that. However, she still paid close attention to Lu Ye's changes, fearing that something was wrong with him. Lu Yi reached out towards Hupo's storage bag. Hupa covered it with its two paws and looked at Lu Yi with a pleading expression. Its meaning was obvious. I don't have much left. Lu Yi glared at it. Only then did Hupa let go of its paws. Although the transformation of the talent tree did not improve Lu Ye's cultivation, the ability of the talent tree now gave him many more cultivation methods and greatly improved his cultivation efficiency. As a result, his growth rate would far surpass his peers. Such benefits were simply unimaginable. Compared to a simple increase in strength, this kind of transformation could really affect Lu Ye's life, and was something he desperately desired. However, along with it, the expenses he would have to pay in the future would be huge. For the time being, Yang Kai decided not to think about it. The transformation of the talent tree had been completed, so Lu Yi was in a good mood and decided to cultivate properly to reward himself. In any case, he had broken through to the first-order True Lake realm for some time now. It was rare for him to have such a stable cultivation environment and more cultivation methods, so it was time for him to raise his cultivation to the second-order True Lake realm. Connecting his consciousness to the heavens, a vortex of world energy appeared in front of Yang Kai. From this vortex, pure world energy poured out and spread out in all directions, wrapping around the figures of one man, one spirit, and one tiger. Adjusting to the level most suitable for himself, Lu Yi continued to absorb the power of the fire spirit stone to replenish the energy reserves of the talent tree, while constructing a small spirit gathering funnel. He looked at the vortex of world energy filled with world energy. Her eyes slightly blurred. Lu Yi, where do you think this vortex leads to? Who knows? Lu Yi casually replied, but I've heard people say that this vortex is connected to earth veins or spirit veins of different quality. That's why there's an endless stream of heaven and earth spiritual chi flowing out for cultivators to refine. Chapter 9:12. If one were to define the density of spiritual energy in his current cultivation environment as a standard, the environment that the roots were in now was at least 3 standard degrees. A difference of 3 times. And the deeper the roots went, the bigger the difference. By the time the roots reached a limit, the difference in the cultivation environment had already reached a level of 5 times. Lu Yi had only just realized that the extension of the roots was not endless. It seemed to have something to do with the strength of his divine sense. Now that he had activated the power of his talent tree, the roots could only extend for about 3 feet at most. Even so, a difference of 5 times was an exaggeration. This also meant that if Lu Yi used the roots of the talent tree to absorb the spiritual power of the world on the other side of the vortex to cultivate, he would definitely be faster than in a normal state of cultivation. Maybe it could reach 5 times, maybe it was not enough, maybe it could even be more. After all, under normal circumstances, he cultivated with the help of the many small funnels that gathered spiritual energy. Such a cultivation method, Lu Yi could not make an accurate comparison between this method and using the talent tree's roots to absorb the spiritual energy. But it was undeniable that he had inadvertently found a method to rapidly increase his cultivation. And this method was built on the foundation of the talent tree's transformation. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Lu Yi had a new question in his mind. Is the situation inside the vortex of spiritual power different at different levels? Seduso CC is the starter. The cultivation environment he created through cherishing heaven's secrets. The spiritual energy whirlpool was at the 3rd level. 1 day and 1 night would cost about 10,000 merits. Above that, there were even higher levels, suitable for late-stage true lake stage and even divine sea stage cultivators. Below that, there were 2 lower levels, suitable for early-stage true lake stage cultivators. He was an exception, so when he tried to use heaven's secrets, he chose the 3rd level. It was not difficult to explore. The level of the spiritual energy whirlpool could be changed at will. As long as he adjusted the level of the spiritual energy whirlpool, he would be able to explore. Lu Yi immediately changed the level of the spiritual energy whirlpool. Moments later he came to a shocking conclusion. No matter what level the spiritual energy whirlpool was, the world inside was the same. If that was the case, then the rumors that he had heard before were not true. The saying that different levels of spiritual vortexes were connected to different quality earth veins or spiritual veins was simply nonsense. They might indeed be connected to some kind of earth vein or spirit vein. Otherwise, there was no way to explain where the rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth came from. However, they were all in the same place. The reason why there were differences in the cultivation environment created by borrowing the mysteries of heaven was because of the different levels of the vortexes of spiritual energy. If the world inside the vortex of spiritual power was compared to a bottle, and the spiritual power of heaven and earth was the water in the bottle, then the vortex of spiritual power was the mouth of the bottle. The size of the bottle mouth. This determined the speed at which the water flowed out of the bottle, thus resulting in a different cultivation environment. The lower the level of the vortex, the smaller the opening of the bottle. Since that was the case, Lu Yi didn't need a large opening. He only needed the most basic opening. It would be convenient for him to extend the roots of his talent tree into the bottle. He could use the lowest level of spirit power whirlpool to cultivate. In this way, the amount of merit points consumed for cultivation would be greatly reduced. However, his cultivation efficiency would not be affected in any way. This was no longer borrowing the mysteries of heaven to cultivate, but stealing the mysteries of heaven. Lu Yi felt that his actions were no different from that of a thief, and he didn't know how the mysteries of heaven would react to this. He carefully maintained it for a moment and only relaxed when he found that there were no abnormalities. The mysteries of heaven were everywhere and knew everything. It was impossible for them to not notice his blatant theft. Since they didn't stop him, it meant that they tacitly approved of it. Thinking about it, whether he was stealing or not, this was his own ability after all. Why would the mysteries of heaven stop him? He couldn't say that he had a talent tree. That was his fault. After understanding this, Lu Yi felt at ease. The sharp changes in the talent tree triggered all kinds of follow-ups, completely changing the cultivation method that Lu Yi had maintained for several years. Many thoughts surged in his mind. Lu Yi suddenly stood up. What's wrong? Yi was puzzled. She didn't understand why Lu Yi stood up when he was cultivating. Lu Yi said and flew out of the window. Soon he arrived. In the ruined Blue Flame Mountain City's Tianji Hall, he connected to the mysteries of heaven and entered the War Merit Pavilion. He wasn't in the mood to talk nonsense with the Golden Flood Dragon and Silver Flood Dragon. He went straight to the place where he could exchange golden spirit lots. With a wave of his hand, he exchanged 10 golden spirit lots. He hurriedly left the War Merit Pavilion and returned to his bamboo house. Seeing Lu Yi grab a handful of spirit lots, Yi finally understood what he was going to do. Lu Yi sat down again and crushed a golden spirit lot. The spirit lot's powder gathered and twisted, turning into a golden whirlpool. Then extremely pure and rich spirit power flowed out from it. Yi and Hoopa hurriedly sat still and inhaled the spirit power to cultivate. This spirit power didn't need any refining to become a powerful foundation. Therefore, using spirit lots to cultivate had always been a method for 9 provinces cultivators to quickly become stronger. Lu Yi wasn't in a hurry to cultivate. Looking at the golden whirlpool in front of him, He was excited and nervous. If things were really as he thought, then the talent tree's transformation this time would be of great help to him. Taking a light breath, he raised his hand and pressed it in front of the golden whirlpool, activating the talent tree's power. Invisible roots stretched out and probed into the whirlpool in Lu Ye's perception. In the next moment, Lu Ye's expression shook. The cultivation environment created by the spirit lots was the best environment that 9 provinces cultivators could have. However, behind the whirlpool, there was an even better environment, one that was unknown to others. Lu Yi clearly sensed that the talent tree's roots had probed into a liquid. That wasn't real liquid, but the condensation of pure spirit power. It was a power that anyone could absorb at will. In an instant, he felt as if he was floating in the clouds and his whole body was dizzy. Forcibly stabilizing his mind, he continued to activate the talent tree's power and probe deeper with his roots. However, out of his expectations, the situation this time was a little different from the previous spiritual energy whirlpool. Inside the spiritual energy whirlpool, the deeper he went, the better the environment was. However, inside the whirlpool created by the spirit lots, there didn't seem to be much difference. Thinking about it, the pure spirit power had already condensed into a liquid existence. What difference could there be? Compared to the environment inside and outside the whirlpool, the difference was at least 3 times. Lu Yi couldn't help but laugh. He pulled Yi over and fiercely kissed her on the face. I'm rich. Yi was dumbfounded. She was in the middle of her cultivation when Lu Yi suddenly made such a move, which really made her feel at a loss. Moreover, she had been with Lu Yi day and night for several years, and they were like real family to each other. Lu Yi had never done anything too intimate with her. At most, he would sometimes pat her little head and pinch her a little. Being kissed like this was the first time. I'm rich, Lu Yi repeated. He excitedly grabbed Hupa beside him and fiercely kissed him. Lanwu. Hupo's face was full of disgust as he struggled with all his might. Yi calmed down and noticed Lu Ye's excitement. She couldn't help but ask, what happened? Lu Yi didn't mention the talent tree. It was a little complicated to explain. He only said, I have a special method that can reach into the inside of this whirlpool and use the environment inside to cultivate. Yi was curious. The environment inside the whirlpool, what is it like? It's hard to describe, but the cultivation environment inside is very good. It's 3 times better than here. 3 times. Yi was shocked. Lu Ye's sudden kiss was thrown out of her mind. Her little brain immediately realized the benefits this could bring to Lu Yi. Doesn't that mean that you can grow 3 times faster than others? More than that. Lu Yi smiled slightly. 3 times faster than me before. In the past, his cultivation speed was much faster than ordinary cultivators. This also allowed him to gain a lot of advantages when using the spirit lots to cultivate. Naturally, it couldn't be used as a standard to measure cultivation speed. Lu Yi, you're amazing. Yi praised from the bottom of her heart. She was happy for Lu Yi from the bottom of her heart. Her little brain thought of something and tilted her head. Lu Yi, if that's the case, then I suggest you exchange for a white spirit lot to cultivate in the future. Why is that? Lu Yi asked. Look, a white spirit lot only costs 200 battle merits, right? A gold spirit lot costs 14,580 points. The difference is many times. If you cultivate with a white spirit lot and a gold spirit lot, isn't there no difference? In this way, won't you save a lot of battle merits? Then you can buy whatever you want in the War Merit Pavilion in the future. Lu Yi was stunned by her words. He felt that it made sense, but when he thought about it carefully, something didn't seem right. Ming. Hupa lowered his eyes. He couldn't bear to look at his 2 masters directly. Even I, a tiger, can understand it. Why are you 2 discussing it so enthusiastically? Lu Yi finally understood what was wrong and laughed. There is no difference between the cultivation environment created by a gold spirit lot and a white spirit lot. The only difference is the length of time it lasts. A white spirit lot is a stick of incense while a gold one is a day and a night. I just heard Yi's words. I suddenly felt that it made sense, but I was too excited and didn't think about it carefully. Now that I understand, I know that Yi's proposal won't work. Yi also came to her senses and her face turned red. Lu Yi rubbed her head. My Lu Yi is the best. Yi smiled sweetly. Cultivate. Cultivate. Lu Yi waved his hand. Since the transformation of the talent tree gave him such a special cultivation method, he naturally couldn't waste it. Right now, he was a first-order True Lake Realm cultivator. He really wanted to know how long it would take for him to reach the second-order True Lake Realm. Chapter 9:13. Because a golden spiritual stick could last for a little more than a day and a night, Lu Yi could no longer patrol every day since he started cultivating. He could only patrol every other day. Fortunately, there were no enemies in the Blue Flame Mountain Pass. As long as the Nianyu Immortals stayed here, the myriad demons Ridge would not dare to invade. The deterrence of a top ghost cultivator in the Spirit Sea realm was too great. No one knew where she would hide. If someone dared to sneak over, they would be exposed and killed by her. The transaction with the Law Division was also carried out as scheduled. The explosive fire spirit stones that Lu Yi refined while cultivating were enough to meet the requirements of the task. Time flew by, and nearly half a month later, the last of the 10 golden spiritual sticks was consumed. The golden vortex in front of him slowly disappeared, and the cultivation was over. Lu Yi opened his eyes and examined his cultivation, feeling the rapid growth in the past half a month. The benefits brought to him after the transformation of the talent tree were greater than he had expected. This was because when the roots of the talent tree reached into the golden vortex to absorb the pure and rich spiritual energy of the world inside the vortex, the efficiency was simply incomparable to that of the small funnel. At first, he thought that the 3 times difference in environment meant that the cultivation efficiency was 3 times higher. When he really started cultivating, he found that this was not the case. If the cultivation method of building the small funnel was called absorption, then the cultivation method of the talent tree's roots reaching into the world opposite the vortex was completely plundering. One was passively accepting the spiritual power flowing out of the golden vortex, and the other was actively acquiring it. There was no comparison at all. Lu Yi felt that the efficiency of his cultivation using a golden spiritual stick was more than 10 times faster than normal. Of course, the difference in the environment inside and outside the vortex was also one of the reasons for this result. Outside the vortex, there was pure spiritual power that could be directly absorbed, but inside the vortex, there was the kind of spiritual liquid that had been liquefied. In half a month, his cultivation had undergone earth-shaking changes. It could be said that since he started cultivating, he had never experienced such a terrifying speed of advancement, even in the Cloud River realm. Advancing too quickly was not necessarily a good thing. During this period of cultivation, he would occasionally enter the Mirage realm to hone himself, just to familiarize himself with the growth of his cultivation as soon as possible. The 10 golden spirit sticks he had exchanged for had been used up, and Lu Yi was not going to exchange any more golden spirit sticks for cultivation in the short term. Although the feeling of rapidly increasing his cultivation base was fascinating, he would never indulge in it. He had to stabilize his cultivation base for a period of time before he could continue cultivating. He let Hu Pa and Yi out of the bamboo building. Just as he was about to patrol the surroundings, a fragrant wind suddenly lingered around his nose. By the time Lu Yi regained his senses, the Thought Moon Immortal was already standing in front of him. The distance between them was less than a foot. Lu Yi jumped in fright and hurriedly took a few steps back. He cupped his fists and bowed, "My lord." Their mountain pass master was always so elusive. For the past half a month, they hadn't even seen his shadow. Today he had suddenly appeared. At this moment, Nian Yuxian was sizing up Lu Yi with uncertainty. She spread out her divine sense and carefully examined him. Although she had already come to a conclusion, she still couldn't be sure. Third Order True Lake Realm. Half a month ago, when Lu Yi returned from Grand Sky City, he was only a first-order True Lake cultivator. Half a month later, he had actually reached the third-order True Lake realm. Even though Nian Yuxian was experienced and knowledgeable, she had never seen such an outrageous thing. Moreover, how could such a thing happen? The cultivation of the True Lake realm required one to undergo the 9 revolutions of spirit energy. Every time one's cultivation base increased, the amount of spirit energy required was extremely large. The further one progressed, the harder it was to progress. Even if Lu Yi had enough merit points to maintain the state of cultivation with the golden spirit stick, it was still impossible for him to advance 2 minor realms in half a month. However, such an outrageous thing had actually happened right under her nose. Nian Yuxian had always given Lu Yi the impression that she was as cold as ice. But now her face was filled with surprise and shock. It was a visual contrast that made him feel funny. Lu Yi didn't dare to laugh. He only replied seriously, "Milord's eyes are like torches." Lu Yi wasn't surprised that Nian Yuxian could see through his cultivation. The difference between their cultivations was obvious. With a sweep of her divine sense, his cultivation was naturally exposed. Nian Yuxian was stunned for a moment. Lu Yi waited for a moment. She didn't seem to have any intention of speaking. He could only say, "If Milord doesn't have any further instructions, this subordinate will go on patrol. Go." Nian Yuxian nodded. She watched Lu Ye's back as he left. She was still in a daze for a long time. A familiar figure once again appeared in her mind. The last time she had been seriously injured and on the verge of death, Lu Yi had used some inexplicable method to bring her back to life. In a daze, she saw the figure of that person on Lu Ye's body. Back then, she had almost encountered the same danger. That person had also saved her like a divine soldier descending from the heavens. Since then, she had wholeheartedly followed and served that person until he died in battle. It was the same today. Back then, that person's cultivation had also risen so quickly that it was inconceivable. She wasn't in the mood to investigate Lu Ye's secrets. Not to mention that Lu Yi was her subordinate. He had saved her life last time. Nian Yuxian couldn't possibly have any ill intentions towards Lu Yi. She was bewildered. The Blue Blood sect, would such a monstrous genius always appear? Previously, when she heard that the great sects of Myriad Demon Ridge viewed him as a thorn in their side, she felt that Myriad Demon Ridge was making a big fuss over nothing. No matter how outstanding Lu Ye's performance in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield was, he was still just a little guy in the Spirit Stream realm and Cloud River realm. He couldn't affect the situation of the two camps. But now, it seemed that there were clearly people in Myriad Demon Ridge who understood. Coupled with the previous incident, it was a bit like once bitten, twice shy. Regarding this potential danger, she had to nip it in the bud. Third Order True Lake Realm. If that was the case, she might be able to put that matter on the agenda. FL11 originally, she had long since given up on this matter, but since her life was saved by Lu Yi, and after witnessing his miraculous methods, she couldn't help but think about it again, because if she had the help of that method, she might have a chance to succeed. And once she succeeded, her strength would definitely improve greatly. At that time, as long as she found the opportunity, she would definitely be able to kill Wanzhong Gang. As these thoughts flashed through her mind, Nian Yuxian made her decision. Dozens of kilometers away from Ash Flame Mountain Pass, Lu Yi stood still and looked in the direction of the volcanic crater. At the end of the siege of Lonely Mountain City, he was worried about Nian Yuxian's safety and chased after her. He really didn't know how the battle would turn out. But judging from the situation at that time, the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators would have no problem defending Lonely Mountain City, but there would definitely be a lot of casualties. He didn't care about the situation in Lonely Mountain City, only about the volcanic crater. There were many fire spirit stones that had yet to be mined in the underground cave. Even though he now had a stable channel to obtain fire spirit stones, and he hadn't used up all the ones he plundered last time, every time he cultivated, he would need to consume the stored fuel to activate the power of his talent tree. His current state of cultivation was basically to activate the power of his talent tree while absorbing the energy of the fire spirit stones, which consumed a lot of energy. There were still many leaves on his talent tree that hadn't been ignited, which was where he needed the fire spirit stones the most. If he didn't think of a way to get more income sooner or later, he would run out of money. Let's go take a look. Even though he didn't think there was much hope, there might be some gains. There was no loss in taking a look. Previously, he was busy cultivating and didn't have time to think about this. Now that he had this thought, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Along the way, before they even reached the mouth of the volcano, they saw many figures flying back and forth in the distance. They were all busy and in full swing. When Lu Yi saw this, he knew that his plan was hopeless. The myriad demon ridge was obviously mining the fire spirit stones in the underground cave. Everything good in there was going to be swept clean. Lu Yi could use the battlefield imprint of the myriad demon ridge to blend in, but the reason he could do it so smoothly last time was because Lonely Mountain City was facing a powerful enemy, and no one could verify his identity. If he did it again this time, it might not be so smooth. If someone wanted to verify his identity, he wouldn't be able to justify himself. Moreover, even if he blended in, it wouldn't be of any use. He couldn't secretly mine the fire spirit stones by himself. How much could he collect? Unless he had the ability to sneak into Lonely Mountain City's treasury and loot it clean. This thought flashed through his mind, but Lu Yi quickly rejected it. It was too dangerous. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly saw a familiar figure flying out of the volcanic crater. When he took a closer look, it was indeed the person he knew. Moreover, the spiritual power fluctuations on her body were obviously not something a Cloud River tier cultivator could possess. She had also advanced to the True Lake tier. Looking at the direction she was flying in, it seemed to be toward Lonely Mountain City. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi did not disturb them. Although they had spent a period of time together and had even worked together for a short period of time, their positions were ultimately different. If they met on the battlefield in the future, they would still be enemies who needed to fight. But then again, when Lu Yi was still in the Return to Heaven Valley spiritual land, many cultivators from the Myriad Demon Ridge were about to encircle and annihilate him. It was this woman who secretly informed Lu Yi, telling him to escape. Although Lu Yi didn't escape in the end, he still owed her a favor. Therefore, if they really met in the future, he could consider going easy on her. When he returned from his patrol, he happened to see a cultivator from Vast Sky City waiting outside his bamboo house. This person was a subordinate of Gan Wudang, and was in charge of taking the refined exploding fire spirit stones from Lu Yi. His name was Cheng Xiu. He had met Lu Yi a few times and was somewhat familiar with him. However, at this moment, this fifth-order True Lake Realm cultivator seemed to be in a bad situation. He stood stiffly in front of the bamboo house, not daring to move. His face was as pale as paper, and large beads of sweat slid down his forehead. His clothes were already wet. One of his hands gripped the sword at his waist so tightly that his knuckles turned white. It couldn't be helped because Thought Moon Immortal was sitting on the trunk of a big tree not far away. Her hands were on both sides of the tree and her two long legs were swinging. Her expression seemed relaxed, but a fierce aura filled the air and affected Cheng Xiu's will. Chapter 9:14. The Thought Moon Immortal's actions caused Cheng Xiu to be like a fully drawn bow, unable to release the arrow. Needless to say, it was extremely uncomfortable. Seeing Lu Ye's return, Cheng Xiu felt as if he had been pardoned. He hurriedly gave Lu Yi a pleading look. Seeing the situation, Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't know how he had provoked the Thought Moon Immortal to be tortured like this. He took a few steps forward and cupped his fists. "My lord, I've returned from my patrol. There are no abnormalities within 100 miles. Please give me your instructions." The Thought Moon Immortal nodded softly and said, "Come find me later. I have something to tell you." "Yes," Lu Yi replied. When he looked up again, the Thought Moon Immortal had already disappeared. Cheng Xiu, who was beside him, almost collapsed. His legs and stomach shook as he said, "Brother Lu, please help me up." After a while in the bamboo house, Cheng Xiu's pale face regained some color. He looked at Lu Yi with emotion. To be able to be so safe and sound while working under that person was also a skill. He cursed in his heart but didn't dare to complain. The spiritual perception of a divine sea realm cultivator was not to be trifled with. How could he dare to say anything disrespectful? He only talked about business, which was to hand over the explosive fire spirit stones to Lu Yi. After he finished counting, Lu Yi said, "Brother Cheng, go back and tell your master that the time of receiving the goods has been changed to once a month. Once every 7 days is a little too frequent. Not to mention that I have to trouble you to run around on both sides. I also have to go into closed-door cultivation sometimes." This suggestion was reasonable. Chang Xiu immediately agreed. I'll go back and report to my lord. However, the final decision is not up to me. You just have to say it. Chang Xiu didn't stay for long and quickly left. After he left, Lu Yi came to the Thought Moon Immortal's bamboo house. Before he could speak, the Thought Moon Immortal's voice came from inside. Lu Yi went straight in. The Thought Moon Immortal was waiting. What orders do you have, my lord? Lu Yi asked. Ever since he came to this Ash Flame Mountain Pass, the Thought Moon Immortal didn't care about him other than giving him some missions in the first few days. Therefore, Lu Yi didn't know why she was looking for him. His strength is nothing in front of the Thought Moon Immortal. Let's not talk about this for now. I need you to use that spirit rune again. In order to understand the flight of the rainbow phoenixes, she had to personally experience it once more. Only then could she decide whether or not to bring Lu Yi along. Of course, when Lu Yi nodded, he had already unsheathed his long saber. It slid across his palm, causing blood to flow. Then he extended his hand towards the Thought Moon Immortal. Nian Yu Immortal understood tacitly. When her fingernails slid across her palm, blood similarly gushed out from the wound. Then she gently placed her hand on Lu Ye's palm. Lu Ye's eyebrows shot up as he gently grasped it. It had to be said that this hand was very soft, almost as if it had no bones. Last time when he was on the brink of death, everything he did was for the sake of emergency, so he didn't carefully experience it. When he held it, it was as if he was holding a piece of smooth and warm jade. In the next moment, the image of the Xiando in their palms turned into two streaks of blood-red light and flew to the back of their hands, forming the shape of a single wing. The shape was as red as blood, vivid and lifelike. The moment the flight of the rainbow phoenixes was successfully constructed, Lu Yi could clearly feel the vast and deep foundation within the Thought Moon Immortal's body. Correspondingly, the Thought Moon Immortal also felt the astonishing vitality within Lu Ye's body. Can't you let go? Thought Moon Immortal asked. Lu Yi shook his head. Only through close physical contact can we share the foundation of our physical bodies. This explanation was reasonable. The Thought Moon Immortal asked again. What's with the vitality in your body? Such a vast vitality was no longer something a true Lake Realm cultivator could possess. Even those divine Sea Realm body cultivators might not have Lu Ye's foundation. Some opportunities, Lu Yi casually replied, not bothering to explain in detail. The Thought Moon Immortal didn't pursue the matter. Instead she asked, what other means are there for me to borrow strength from? Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, a little spiritual connection. If the flight of the rainbow phoenixes targets the physical body, then a little spiritual connection targets the spirit. However, if we really use it, there will be no more secrets between us. Compared to Sir's spirit, the strength of my spirit is not worth mentioning. It's fine if I don't lend it. The Thought Moon Immortal nodded. She withdrew her jade-like hand from Lu Ye's and said calmly, I'll give you a mission. Please tell me, sir. The Thought Moon Immortal took out her guard token and activated it. Lu Ye's expression turned serious. This kind of mission issued through the guard token was extremely official. It was also recognized by Heaven's secret. In other words, he could obtain battle merits. He immediately checked the guard token with both apprehension and anticipation. When he saw the contents of the mission, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The mission was very simple. Offer 3 drops of soul-cleansing water to the Mountain Pass Master. What kind of mission was this? If you want it, just say it. If you say it, I'll naturally give it to you. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Lu Yi took out a bottle from his storage pouch and passed it to the Thought Moon Immortal. There were clearly more than 3 drops of soul-cleansing water in the bottle. There might even be 10 drops. That's too much. It's beyond my authority. The Thought Moon Immortal frowned. The 3 drops are required for the mission. The rest is a gift from your humble servant to you, sir. The Thought Moon Immortal's expression was somewhat strange. The word gift made her feel very old. However, this was Lu Ye's goodwill after all. She accepted it readily. The next moment, Lu Yi sensed a movement in his battlefield imprint. He lowered his head to check and found that his battle merits had increased by a lot, including the gains from refining the explosive fire spirit rock. He now had almost 230,000 battle merits. In a few days, he would be distributing the 2 moon rods again. He would gain another 60,000 battle merits. Lu Yi didn't know what it was like for other true Lake Realm cultivators to obtain battle merits. However, ever since he came to the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass, it had always been very easy to obtain battle merits. Moreover, it was usually large amounts of battle merits that came into his account. I'll give you 3 days of leave. After 3 days, follow me to a place. Lu Yi had only asked casually, but he never expected the Thought Moon Immortal to have no intentions of hiding anything from him. Le Yuan. Where was Le Yuan? Lu Yi had never heard of it before. He took out his 10-point map in a hurry and checked it. After confirming the location of Le Yuan, he could not help but raise his head and look at the Thought Moon Immortal. The Le Yuan that borders the Mist Province and the War Province? Yes. The Thought Moon Immortal nodded. Lu Yi was immediately alarmed. Why are you going there? If he wanted to go there, he would have to pass through the Myriad Devil Ridge's territory in the War Province and venture deep into the heart of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Just how dangerous was that? Of course he could choose to take a detour, but if he did, it would definitely take up a lot of time. With the Thought Moon Immortal's temper and personality, it was unlikely for her to take a detour. It was very likely for her to directly pass through the entire War Province. Since I want to go, I obviously have my reasons for going. This isn't a mission. You can call it a request so you don't have to go. The 3 days are a holiday, but it's also time for you to consider. Go. You can give me an answer in 3 days. I'll take my leave. Lu Yi cupped his fists and retreated. He finally understood that the Thought Moon Immortal's investigation of the flight of the colorful phoenixes and her request for him to contribute the soul-cleansing water were all preparations for the trip in 3 days. He didn't know what secrets were hidden in the Li Plains, but if it could attract an expert like the Thought Moon Immortal, it was obviously a huge benefit. The Thought Moon Immortal gave him 3 days to consider, but to Lu Yi, he didn't need to consider anything at all. Since his sect master wanted to borrow his strength, he naturally couldn't refuse. He didn't forget that when he was in danger in Lonely Mountain City, the Thought Moon Immortal saved him at the risk of being exposed. Although he also saved the Thought Moon Immortal's life later on, and they were considered to be even, interpersonal relationships weren't a transaction, nor was it a bargaining chip. Since his sect master was going, he had to accompany him. However, before that, he had to make more preparations. At the very least, he had to increase his life-saving assets. It seemed like he would have to spend some of the battle merits he obtained. After walking out of the Thought Moon Immortal's bamboo building, Lu Yi went straight to the Tianji Hall. He quickly connected to the Tianji Hall and entered the War Merit Hall. Following his memory, he arrived in front of a stone platform. There was a treasure robe placed on the stone platform, and it was a high-grade magic treasure robe. Magic cultivators had a higher demand for protective treasures like treasure robes and armor. This was because the physical bodies of magic cultivators couldn't be compared to cultivators of other sections. If they had a treasure robe or armor to protect them, they would have more means to protect their lives. Weapon cultivators generally didn't have a use for them, especially for weapon cultivators like Lu Yi who pursued their own battle techniques. Treasure robes and armor were even more burdensome. This was because for weapon cultivators, excessive protection would instead reduce the resistance to their own advancement. If they wore treasure robes for a long time, it was very easy for the weapon cultivator to misestimate their own strength, and it would also reduce the weapon cultivator's vigilance and grasp of battle opportunities. Therefore, since the beginning of his cultivation, Lu Yi had never bought any treasure robes or armor. Chapter 9:15. What's more, Lu Yi had the defensive spirit pattern as a means of protection, so he basically didn't need treasured clothes or armor. But this time he had to buy it. Going out with Nian Yuxian, who knew what kind of danger he would encounter and what kind of enemies he would encounter. With the protection of the treasured clothes, he could also have more life-saving means. It wasn't that there weren't better treasured clothes in the War Merit Pavilion. Not to mention the magic tool level, there were even spirit treasure level ones. But with Lu Ye's cultivation, The high-grade magic tool level was already the limit for him. No matter how advanced the treasured clothes were, it would be difficult for him to activate them. However, the price of this Scarlet Dragon battlesuit was also not cheap. It was a full 90,000 battle merits. Compared to the soul-suppressing pagoda, which was more than 180,000 battle merits, its price was indeed only a fraction. However, the soul-suppressing pagoda was a soul tool that even a divine sea realm cultivator might not have, so its rarity was naturally not comparable to the treasured clothes. But compared to other magic tools of the same quality, the price of 90,000 battle merits seemed outrageous. Of course, you get what you pay for. Treasured clothes and armors were expensive on one hand, but their quality was also unquestionable. It was the best magic tool level. Lu Yi only pondered for a moment, then decisively exchanged for the Scarlet Dragon battle suit. The loss of 90,000 battle merits really came and went quickly. It was quite heavy, but the material was as smooth as silk. He didn't know what material was used to make it. In the 9 regions, cultivators who could sew treasured armors and treasured clothes were extremely rare. If alchemists, array cultivators, and refiners were special talents that the major sects needed to cultivate with all their strength, then those who could sew treasured armors and treasured clothes were special talents among special talents. The Scarlet Dragon battlesuit was named after a dragon, but it was obviously impossible to sew it with dragon scales. It was very likely to be made of dragon skin or something like that. After taking off his original clothes and putting on the Scarlet Dragon battlesuit, he was immediately in high spirits. It was said that clothes made the man, and saddles made the horse. Because of Lu Ye's experience over the years and his own personality, when dealing with strangers, it was inevitable that he would give people a murderous feeling. However, after putting on this Scarlet Dragon battlesuit, the original murderous aura disappeared a lot. Instead, it was more elegant and gentle, like a noble son from a big family or a big sect. Lu Yi activated his spiritual power and sensed it silently for a while. He more or less understood the various aspects of this treasure robe. This treasure robe had a very strong shrinking ability, which was a good thing for Lu Yi because after he used the beast transformation secret technique, his body would change to a certain extent. He had used the beast transformation secret technique twice, and both times his clothes had become ragged, but if he wore this Scarlet Dragon battle suit, he would not have such troubles in the future. Not only that, the armor seemed to be able to change its color. When Lu Yi got it, the color of the armor was aqua blue, but under the urging of spiritual energy, the color of the armor quickly changed. After trying out a few colors, Lu Yi was more inclined towards dark red and black. In the end, after some hesitation, she settled on black. In the end, the elegant and easygoing aqua blue color did not suit his temperament, and the black color was more profound. At this moment, the image of a noble young master from a large family or sect vanished. Lu Yi nodded in satisfaction. As for the flawless white color, that was completely out of the question. His sect destroying you was completely incompatible with the pure white color. Many sword cultivators liked to wear white, such as 4th senior brother Li Baxian. His clothes were white with a fluttering red cloud pattern on it. When he moved, it was like a gorgeous sunset, giving off a wild and unrestrained feeling. It was completely different from the pure white color. This was the appearance of the armor. As for what kind of specific functions it had, and how strong the defense it could provide, it still needed to be tested in actual combat. Lu Yi believed that his 90,000 battle merits would not go to waste. After all, this was a product of the War Merit Pavilion. After leaving the War Merit Pavilion, Lu Yi returned to his bamboo house. Ian Hu-Pa, who had been left behind to guard the place, immediately saw Lu Yi in his new outfit. They gathered around him, clicking their tongues in wonder as they sized him up. Lu Yi held his head high and puffed out his chest, making his figure look heroic. "Looks good, doesn't it?" Yi couldn't help but nod. "Looks good, really good. It would look even better if it was white." "What kind of eyes are you looking at?" Lu Yi glared at her. He didn't want to show off anymore and sat down cross-legged. He took out the breath fruit core and prepared to enter the Mirage realm to test the defensive power of his artifact robe. Half a day later, Lu Yi opened his eyes and frowned. It wasn't that the result was unsatisfactory, but it was beyond his expectations. In the Mirage realm, the attacks of the 4th or 5th order True Lake realm cultivators couldn't break through the artifact robe's defense. This artifact robe had greatly increased Lu Ye's strength, at least 30% of his survivability. For others, a artifact robe's defense would naturally be so good that they would be overjoyed. But Lu Ye didn't lose his head because of this. External forces were still external forces. They could be borrowed, but they couldn't be relied on. It was really easy for a weapon cultivator to lose his accurate judgment of his own strength. In the long run, it was very likely that he would be unprepared. If the artifact robe's defense was broken by a master one day, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking about it. But he wouldn't abandon the artifact robe for this reason. Since he had already spent 90,000 battle points, it was impossible to put it aside. Lu Ye could only secretly reflect on it at all times. However, compared to the protection provided by the artifact robe, the consumption of spirit energy in battle was obviously much higher. This was the price to pay for wearing the artifact robe. In a big battle, offense was the best defense. Instead of consuming spirit energy on defense, it was better to slash a few more times. The matter of the artifact robe was settled for the time being. After all, this trip was to follow Thought Moon Immortal on a mission. It was good to have such a protective measure. Thought Moon Immortal gave him 3 days. If he used 3 days to cultivate, there was no way for him to improve his strength. Lu Ye thought for a moment and suddenly came up with an idea. If that was the case, it seemed to be feasible. He hurriedly searched through his inventory bag, took out a sound transmission stone, and infused it with spirit energy. Soon he frowned because the sound transmission stone didn't show any signs of resonance. In other words, the other sound transmission stone wasn't in the same world as the one in his hand. It was very likely that it had been put into the storage bag. After all, in 9 regions, the communication between cultivators relied on the battlefield imprint. The state guards could also rely on the guard token. Who would use such a low-level thing like the sound transmission stone? But if the sound transmission stone was ineffective, how could he find the other party? He couldn't just go to Lonely Mountain City in broad daylight again. Last time he was able to get through without any danger, but this time he might not be able to do so. After thinking about it, Lu Ye soon had an idea. He concentrated his mind and searched through the battlefield imprint. He found a brand that he hadn't contacted for a long time and sent out a message. After waiting for a moment, the other party replied with a simple word. Okay. Lu Ye got up, walked out of the bamboo house and soared into the sky. On the other side of the bamboo house, Thought Moon Immortal felt something. She opened her eyes and glanced in the direction where Lu Ye disappeared, and then no longer paid any attention. Blue Flame Mountain Pass and Lonely Mountain City Pass were thousands of miles apart. This 1,000 miles of land was regarded as a buffer zone for the confrontation between the two camps and did not belong to either side. I have my bottom line. Don't even think about bribing me. Soul cleansing water, Lu Ye said softly. What? The bottle contains 3 drops of soul cleansing water. Take it as your reward for helping me this time. You only need to give that item to Yingwu Ji. You don't need to do anything else. Shin Little Cat looked at Lu Ye in shock. She had an expression that said, "Don't lie to me." Soul cleansing water was a treasure that even Spirit Sea Realm cultivators coveted. It was extremely rare. A true Lake Realm cultivator like her had no way to obtain it. She was now a true Lake Realm cultivator. Above that would be Spirit Sea. However, she knew her own aptitude. It would be very difficult for her to reach Spirit Sea in this lifetime. But if she had 3 drops of soul cleansing water in her hands, she suppressed the excitement in her heart and opened the bottle. Suddenly, a fragrance lingered at the tip of her nose. She felt refreshed. Shin Little Cat had never seen soul cleansing water before. She didn't know if the bottle contained soul cleansing water or not. But even if it wasn't soul cleansing water, it must be a treasure that was beneficial to the soul. She grabbed it and stuffed it into her plump chest. Bottom lines are meant to be broken. I'll definitely help you with this. Her face was full of righteousness. Bai Chinese network, she sighed in her heart. It wasn't that she wasn't firm, but Lu Yi had given her too much. Very good. Lu Yi nodded in satisfaction. But there's one more problem. Shen Little Cat looked troubled. Speak. You know that Ing Wu Ji. He comes from San Luo Hall and is a very arrogant person. He was fine before, but I don't know what troubles him recently, but he has been pulling a long face all day. I met him a few days ago and greeted him, but he ignored me. It's not a problem for me to give him the item, but what if he doesn't want it? If he dares to refuse, you can say something to him. What? Eternal jade blood. Shen Little Cat looked at him meaningfully. And say that Ing Wuji isn't a spy of your Grand Sky Alliance. She even had a secret signal. Lu Yi was too lazy to explain anything. After a while, Shen Little Cat left. Lu Yi also returned along the way. At the Lonely Mountain Pass, Shen Little Cat returned with ease. Following the memory in her mind, she walked toward a group of buildings in the southeast corner. Ing Wuji's residence was there. Although her hair was long, she had her own judgment. No matter what Lu Yi asked her to do this time, it would harm the interests of Wanemo Ridge. No matter what the relationship between Lu Yi and Ing Wuji was, she shouldn't pass on this message. Just as she said to Lu Yi, public was public, private was private. If she couldn't even distinguish this, then she shouldn't have cultivated for so many years. But the temptation of 3 drops of soul-cleansing water was too great. She could only agree. As for taking the things and not doing anything, it was impossible for her to keep the soul-cleansing water. No matter what, she had to be sure that Ing Wuji wasn't a spy of Grand Sky Alliance. If the two of them only had a simple personal relationship, then it was nothing. As long as Ing Wuji didn't do anything to harm the Wanemo Ridge camp, then everything was fine. After making up her mind before she reached the place, she saw Ing Wuji's figure in front of her. Shen Little Cat was overjoyed. She hurriedly greeted him and bowed. Senior brother Ing. Ing Wuji looked like he had a lot on his mind. He subconsciously responded and was about to pass by. But unexpectedly, Shen Little Cat turned and blocked his way. What's the matter? Ing Wuji asked with a frown. If it was before, he wouldn't be so impatient with such a beautiful junior sister blocking his way. But recently there were too many things on his mind. He wasn't in the mood to chat and joke with his beautiful junior sisters. Disregarding everything else, many people had died during the siege of Lonely Mountain City. Not a single one of the Cloud River tier cultivators that he had brought out to collect Earthfire had survived. Others didn't know how the Fire Spirit tribe came to be, but he knew very well. Not only was he involved, but Lu Yi was also involved. But this matter couldn't be known to others. Otherwise, his future would be bleak. Moreover, after knowing that Lu Yi was in the Ash Flame Mountain Pass opposite, Ing Wuji knew that he couldn't stay in this place for long. Otherwise, he would be harmed by that calamity sooner or later. Disregarding everything else, many people had died during the siege of Lonely Mountain City. Not a single one of the Cloud River tier cultivators that he had brought out to collect Earthfire had survived. Others didn't know how the Fire Spirit tribe came to be, but he knew very well. Not only was he involved, but Lu Yi was also involved. But this matter couldn't be known to others. Otherwise, his future would be bleak. Brother Shen. Shen Zhongqing walked on the road. When he met people he was familiar with, he would greet them or nod. But no matter who it was, everyone's face was expressionless. It was as if they were indifferent to everything. To this, Shen Zhongqing was already used to it. Because this was the Demon Suppression Department, an organization that maintained the stability of the Great Qin Empire. Their main duty was to kill demons and monsters. Of course, they also had other side jobs. Could be said that, in the Demon Suppression Department, everyone's hands were stained with blood. When a person was used to life and death, then they would become indifferent to many things. When he first came to this world, Shen Zhongqing was a little uncomfortable. But as time passed he got used to it. The Demon Suppression Department was very big. Those who could stay in the Demon Suppression Department were all powerful experts or people who had the potential to become experts. Shen Zhongqing belonged to the latter. Among them, the demon suppression department was divided into two professions. One was the guardian, the other was the demon exorcist. Anyone who entered the demon suppression department would start from the lowest level, the demon exorcist. Then they would advance step by step and finally have a chance to become a guardian. Shun Zhongqing's previous life was a trainee demon exorcist in the demon suppression department. He was also the lowest level demon exorcist. He had the memories of his previous life. He was also very familiar with the environment of the demon suppression department. It didn't take long for Shun Zhongqing to stop in front of a pavilion. Different from the other places in the demon suppression department that were filled with killing intent, this pavilion was like a crane in a flock of chickens. In the demon suppression department that was filled with blood, it presented a different kind of tranquility. At this time, the pavilion's door was open. Occasionally, people would enter and leave. Shun Zhongqing only hesitated for a moment before stepping in. Entering the pavilion, the environment suddenly changed. A wave of ink mixed with a faint smell of blood hit his face. His brows instinctively furrowed, but they quickly smoothed out. The smell of blood on everyone in the demon suppression department was almost impossible to wash clean. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.